My name is Chinemo. I woke up to find myself in a strange body. The body of a boy with wolf ears on his head. Before I could make sense of anything. An old shaman in wolf skin. Was already painting blood on my forehead. He slashed my chest with his claws. The pain told me this was real. I had actually crossed into another world. But the ritual failed. I couldn't transform into a beast like everyone else. The shaman looked at me with disgust. And told me to get lost. My so-called brothers and sisters. The kids who used to follow me around. Watched me leave with cold eyes. They escorted me to the edge of our territory. And told me never to come back. Even my father, the Wolf King. Did in single quotes to protect me. He never liked me much anyway. In this world, if you can't transform, you can't hunt. And if you can't hunt, your tribe throws you out to die in the wilderness. I didn't feel too sorry for myself. I touched the fuzzy wolf ears on my head. Looked around the dark plains. And started walking south toward the mountains. Open land is dangerous when you're alone. I needed shelter. I made it to the mountain range. After days of walking, I found a cave halfway up a peak, near a stream. No other beasts or people around. I started gathering berries and wild greens to survive. My wolf blood craved meat, so I built traps. Most failed. But I got lucky and caught a wild rabbit. With some strength back. I spent 2 days shaping stones into spears. One morning by the stream, I spotted a tiny rabbit-eared girl being chased by a huge fox. She was small, barely reaching my chest. And her little legs were a blur. The fox was faster. Just when it lunged at her. She flipped onto her back and kicked it hard with both feet. Some kind of rabbit survival move. The fox went flying. I didn't waste the chance. I threw my spear, and it hit the fox from 20 meters away. The beast grabbed at the shaft, stumbled, and collapsed. The little rabbit girl saw me coming with another spear, and dropped to her knees, shaking. She squeezed her eyes shut and whispered, terrified of the pain. But I walked right past her. I knelt beside the fox, and started skinning it with a stone blade. She fainted on the spot. When she woke up in my cave, she tried to sneak out. But I told her not to worry. I only eat animals, not beast. People like you. She was too weak to run anyway. Turns out, she was just like me. She failed her transformation, too, and got kicked out by her rabbit tribe. Rabbit people who can't transform, can't even digest plant fiber properly. In their human form, same fate, different tribe. She watched me struggle with something she'd never seen before. I was trying to make fire. I'd been at it for days, using a bow drill, blowing on it with wood shavings and fox fur. Nothing but thin smoke, every single time. Then finally a spark caught. A tiny flame grew. She screamed, to beast, people, fire means disaster. It burns forests and destroys everything. She pointed at it and yelled, disaster. I just grinned and let out a howl. We must have looked ridiculous. Me, celebrating, and her, absolutely terrified. Both sitting in the same dark cave. That night, I finished cleaning the fox skin by the fire. I scraped the inside with my stone knife, and roasted it to dry it out. Tomorrow, I'd soak it in ash water to cure the leather. I knew how to do all this, not because I had some magical cheat system. Back on Earth, I used to write novels. I researched survival skills, and farming techniques for my characters. It's funny, really. I've created dozens of cheat systems for my fictional heroes. But when I reincarnated into this world myself, I got absolutely nothing. The only gift I received was a perfect memory of my past life. Like a movie I could replay in my head at any time. That was my only advantage in this new world. I spread the fox skin over a pile of dry grass. It actually made a pretty decent bed. The little rabbit girl didn't leave, though. She'd figured out that I wasn't going to eat her, and she really had nowhere else to go. So she stayed. Which was fine by me. Living alone out here was starting to get pretty lonely anyway, and I could definitely use an extra pair of hands. That night, I roasted the fox meat over the fire. It smelled absolutely awful. My sharp wolf nose picked up every single bit of that musky stink. But I was starving, so I just bit into it anyway. No salt, no seasoning. It tasted just about as bad as you'd imagine. And I heard her stomach growl. She was huddled up against the cave wall, hugging her knees tightly. I held out a piece of meat to her. Want some? Her eyes instantly lit up. She crawled right over, snatched it with her mouth, and sat there nibbling on it with both hands. I was surprised. She was supposed to be a herbivore. But then I remembered that even regular rabbits back on Earth will sometimes eat meat for protein. Since her body had evolved into a human-like form, she could probably digest it just fine. Between the two of us, we ended up eating nearly half the fox, maybe 7 or 8 pounds of meat. I patted my belly, feeling fully satisfied. I'd smoke the rest tomorrow to make it last longer. Before going to sleep, I buried some embers in the ash to keep the fire going, then blocked the cave entrance with a massive tree root and some branches. But when I turned around, the little rabbit girl let out a squeal. My eyes were glowing a faint green in the dark wolf eyes. I gently told her to just go to sleep. The next morning, I woke up feeling something warm, curled up tightly against me. She had crawled into my arms during the night, her rabbit ears drooping in her sleep. Somehow, my hand was gripping her little puff of a tail. This kid had some serious guts, sleeping in the arms of a wolf. I gently tugged on one of her ears to wake her up. She jolted awake and accidentally grabbed onto something. Something she really shouldn't have. Let go. I snapped. She released her grip and looked up at me with big, watery eyes. Mr. Wolf, please don't eat me. I snorted. You're not even tasty. As I stood up, I realized I was still completely naked, and certain things were very obvious. In the morning light, she just stared at me with wide, clueless eyes. I scratched my chin and decided that I really needed to make some clothes. After all, I came from a civilized world. Running around naked all day just didn't sit right with me. Plus, if something important got scratched during a hunt, my life would be ruined. I gave her a gentle kick. Come on, let's go find some food. Her face instantly broke into a wide smile. She understood that I was keeping her around. On our way down the mountain, I kept pointing at myself, saying, I'm Chinemo, Shianemo. She tried repeating it over and over, until she finally got close. Kun.e-mo. I patted her head. Good girl. Then, I started thinking about what to call her. With her white rabbit ears, so small and pale, she really reminded me of the jade rabbit from the old legends. That's when I decided to name her Chinyu. She didn't quite understand at first, but by the time we reached the bottom of the mountain, it finally clicked. Chinyu was her name now. She was absolutely thrilled. She hopped and bounced all over the grassy slope, clutching the stone spear I had given her. I had made 3 spears in total. She carried 1, while I carried 2 on my back. On top of that, I had a rough stone dagger hanging from a bark rope tied around my waist. At the stream, Chenyu spotted some small yellow flowers in the grass. She plucked a handful and stuffed them into her mouth, then tried to feed some to me. I shook my head. There was no way I was eating unknown wild plants raw. They're yummy, she insisted, looking hurt when I refused. I waded into the cold stream to practice spearfishing. The water was shallow, crystal clear all the way to the bottom, and teeming with fish. At least there were no bears around to compete with. Out of about 50 attempts, I managed to spear 3 fish, all decent-sized and enough for lunch. Then, Chen cried out in pain. I rushed over to find her finger bleeding. She had cut herself, trying to strip bark with a stone knife. Just like I'd shown her, she was trying to act tough, but her eyes looked absolutely pitiful. I chewed up some blood-stopping grass that I recognized from this body's memories, which looked like a thistle, and pressed it onto her cut. In this beast world, every tribe passes down little survival tricks like that, just like dogs back on Earth. Somehow know exactly which plants to eat when they're sick. I spent the rest of the morning trying to weave a basket from branches and strips of bark. Chenyu sat beside me, watching my hands work, completely fascinated. By noon, I had finished something that looked roughly like a bowl. I scooped some yellow clay from the stream bed. Into it, tossed the 3 fish on top, and we headed back up to the cave. The grilled fish we had for lunch smelled wonderful. Chenyu forced down half a fish. She wasn't a fan of meat, but I made her finish a whole one anyway. Her body really needed the protein. After eating, I started experimenting with the clay, trying to fire some simple pottery. I desperately needed a container to boil water. Drinking raw stream water forever was basically a death sentence. Parasites, bacteria, and all kinds of other dangers in this world. Even with their stronger, human-like bodies, the Wolfer people only lived to about 30. They drank untreated water, ate raw meat, and lived just like wild beasts. But I knew better. If I could just secure proper food, clean water, and basic hygiene, there was no reason I couldn't live to 50 or 60. That knowledge from my previous life was the only real weapon I had. The clay I brought back wasn't for making pottery just yet. I used it to seal the gaps in a small stone stove I had built near the cave entrance. The mountain wind kept blowing out my fire, so I packed clay between the stones to trap the heat inside. I told Shinyu to stay inside the cave while I went out. She grabbed my arm, terrified of being left alone. I smiled, promising her I would be back before sunset. She seemed to understand that much. Her mother used to say those exact words before leaving to forage for food. After a short rest, I headed down to the stream with 2 spears. I wanted to gather more stones and clay to patch up the holes inside our cave. I couldn't risk having snakes crawl in at night. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed. I dropped flat into the tall grass. It sounded like a bear. A moment later, the desperate shriek of a wild boar joined in. They were fighting. I crept closer. In the middle of the stream stood an enormous wild boar, nearly 3 meters long. Facing it was a brown bear standing upright, but it was clearly smaller than a normal wild bear. That told me he was likely a bear tribesman, in his beast form, not a true wild animal. His belly was bleeding badly, where the boar had gored him. The bear was smart, though he kept dodging instead of charging head-on. But then, his transformation wore off. His body shrank down into a bald, muscular man with blood still pouring from his gut. Sensing his weakness, the boar charged. What happened next completely stunned me. The man grabbed both of the boar's tusks with his bare hands as the boar shoved him back, sliding through the water. But he held on when the pig paused to breathe. He slammed its head underwater. The boar thrashed back up and flung him through the air. He splashed down hard and didn't move. The boar stood there, gasping. This was my chance. It had burned most of its energy fighting the bear man. I sprinted out of the bushes without a sound. At 10 meters, the boar turned its head. The last thing it saw from that eye was my spear. Flying straight into it, the boar screamed. A horrible, piercing sound that echoed across the whole valley. But a stone spear through the eye wasn't enough to kill something this tough. It just made it furious. The half-blind boar charged at me. I turned and ran. No way was I fighting this thing up close. It chased me for dozens of meters. Before its legs started shaking, the fight with the bear had drained it. It stopped, panting heavily. So, I stopped too. I picked up rocks and started throwing them from 6 or 7 meters away. When it tried to stand and charge, I backed off. When it collapsed, again, I moved in and kept throwing. I lost count of how many stones I hurled. The boar finally lay on its side, belly heaving. I thought about how primitive hunters on Earth used to do exactly this. Wound an animal, then follow it for hours until it bled out. Humans win with patience, not strength. My only worrying was the bear man, coming back to steal my kill. But with that belly wound, he probably couldn't. I kept testing the boar. Every time I got close, it would lurch up one more time. I'd run, wait, and come back. This went on until sunset. When the first bright star appeared in the sky, I finally picked up a rock the size of my head. I crept within a few meters and smashed it down right on the boar's skull. No sound this time, just a dull thud. I grabbed my spear and stabbed its belly several times, just to make sure it was dead. I stood there, catching my breath, looking up at the hawks circling overhead. The boar was massive. There was no way I could drag it home. Even with China helping, I'd have to butcher what I could carry. I checked where the bear man had fallen. He was gone, and that made me really uneasy. As long as he was alive somewhere nearby, I'd have to stay alert. I cut open the boar's belly, pulled out the guts, and carved off as much meat as I could fit into my woven basket. The thing was huge, but surprisingly lean. I covered the rest of the carcass with branches, hoping the hawks would leave me some of it for tomorrow. Back at the cave, Shinu. She smelled the blood on me and went completely pale, but I just grinned. I'm fine. Look what I got. I couldn't help showing off a little. This was my first big kill, after all. Of course, I'd had help from the bear man softening it up first. Alone, I'd never have picked a fight with a wild boar of that size. China stared at the pile of pork, then started bouncing up and down, flashing her big front teeth, her red eyes shining with something like pure admiration. Roast pork tonight. She dug into the grilled meat happily. It tasted way better than fox. Somewhere in the middle of chewing, she paused with a strange look on her face. She was realizing she didn't actually hate eating meat anymore. That seemed to confuse her a little. The next morning, I took Shiny down to the boar carcass. When I saw it, I couldn't help shouting. The whole thing had been picked clean overnight. Leaving nothing left but a pile of white bones. Some of the bones were even missing. The smaller predators around here were ruthless. Still, bones had their uses. The boar's tusks, especially. Sharpen the tips, and you've got yourself a decent short weapon. I started hammering away at the base of the tusks, using a rock to break them free. Shiyu was studying the bones quietly. Then, her face went tense. Bear ... A bear? Where? My whole body stiffened. She stuck out her tongue and pointed at the bite marks on the leg bone. I leaned in and sniffed. My Wolf blood confirmed it. Bear teeth. That wounded bear man had dragged himself here during the night to eat his share, even with that gut wound. His sheer toughness was almost admirable. Look, footprints. Shiyu pointed at the ground. I felt a little embarrassed. This tiny rabbit girl was way more observant than me. She read tracks like a seasoned hunter. I scratched my head. Clearly, there was always something to learn from others. My brain was still stuck in modern world thinking. As a wilderness hunter, I was a complete amateur. After that day, no big animals showed up near the stream for a while. Herds of giant deer passed through sometimes, but I was too busy teaching Din Yu how to make pottery to go chasing after them. We already had enough stored food anyway. We shaped clay pots together using coils of mud, stacking the rings and smoothing them out. The good news was, our pots looked decent. The bad news was, most of them cracked when we fired them. After 7 or 8 days, we'd only managed to make a few small balls. But we didn't give up. We adjusted the fire's temperature, improved our little kill, and I kept replaying every pottery video I'd ever watched. In my head, I even tried flipping the pots upside down during firing. Slowly, we were figuring things out. On the 10th day, we finally finished making a large clay jar. Mo Chenyu threw her arms around me and bounced around in circles. She was wearing only a strip of fox fur that I'd cut and stitched into a simple chest wrap. Her excitement gave me the energy to keep going. I playfully pinched her rabbit ear, and she squeezed her legs together in that adorable, pigeon-toed way anime girls do, letting out a soft, whimpering sound. She was trembling slightly. It was incredibly distracting. I laughed it off, but I couldn't help wondering briefly. Could two different beastier species actually have children together? According to the memories of this body, it seemed possible. But those mixed-blood children almost never awakened their beast powers, and ended up rejected by every tribe. I told her, you practice braiding bark rope, while I build a simple stretcher. It wasn't for carrying people, but for hauling supplies. But when I went to check my traps near the stream, I spotted someone in the water. A shiny bald head. It was the barrier man, washing himself. The wound on his belly had already scabbed over into a dark, reddish clot, with absolutely no infection. These people healed like wild animals. I wasn't afraid of him, though. Bears can outrun wolves, and in my memories, I'd seen barrier people try to chase Volfear people, and fail every single time. As long as I kept my distance, I was safe. He noticed me staring and turned around. We locked eyes from about 2 or 3 meters apart. He smiled at me, but I didn't smile back. I stayed completely on guard. He stood up and called out a single word, Volf. I raised an eyebrow. He rubbed his bald head and gave me a nod. Was he trying to be friendly? I still wasn't ready to trust him. I nodded back, then turned and walked away. Behind me, I could feel his disappointment. Over the following days, the bald barrier man kept showing up at the stream. He never came closer than 20 meters. He seemed to understand my boundaries. Sometimes, he'd toss fish in my direction. I'd occasionally throw him a rabbit from my traps. In return. Well, I didn't eat much rabbit anyway. Too much protein isn't good for you, after all. And as spring deepened, food wasn't scarce. He started watching me fish with a spear, and tried copying me with a wooden stick, but he couldn't hit a single fish. Chunyu sat on the bank, shaping clay coils, giggling at his clumsy attempts. After failing repeatedly, he just sat in the water and laughed at himself. I couldn't take it anymore. I waved for him to throw me the stick. He got excited and hurled it over. I barely dodged in time. The thing came at me like a missile. Bear's strength was no joke. I picked up the stick and carved it into a proper wooden spear. With my stone knife in hand, I hesitated before throwing it back. Could I really trust him? But after 20-some days of living near each other, he had shown no hostility. These primitive beastmen seemed straightforward, with no scheming in them. Just as I was about to toss him the spear, Volf howls echoed across the valley. My expression hardened instantly. Chunyu, let's go. I grabbed her hand. Behind us, the bear man roared, trying to scare the wolves away with his presence. I shouted back at him, "Bear, run." He glanced at me, but didn't move. Wolves emerged from the western bushes. The lead wolf had two distinctive, white patches on its mane. I slowed down. I recognized that marking. It was my father's, the wolf king of my old tribe. What were they doing all the way out here? I crouched with Chunyu in the grass across the stream, watching the wolves shift back into human form. 6 wolf-feared tribesmen surrounded the bald bear man. My father stood right at the front. They seemed to be talking. Then, the bear man growled and stepped forward angrily. The 5 wolves behind my father immediately transformed and snarled back at him. "What they doing?" Chinyu whispered. "What are they doing?" I corrected her quietly. Even now, I couldn't stop teaching her grammar. She repeated, "What are they doing?" "I don't know," I said, shaking my head. She tugged on my arm nervously. "Let's go." "Not yet. Let's watch a little longer." Before we could say anything else, a roar shook the air. The bear man had transformed into his brown bear form. The wolves circled him, darting in and out, looking for an opening to bite him. The fight didn't last long. The bear man was forced out of his beast form, and stood there panting, covered in fresh bite wounds. He looked upstream, with sad eyes, then turned and walked away. The wolves let him go. They had won. They owned this territory now. They took his land, I muttered, frowning. I didn't want my old tribe, expanding their territory all the way to this stream. This was my home now. Let's go. They might smell us, I whispered, pulling Chinyu away. My face darkened. Are we going to have to move again? I had only just settled back into the cave. I couldn't sleep. The firelight danced on the walls. As I tossed and turned. Chinyu slept peacefully in my arms. Without a single care in the world. I noticed her body seemed to have grown a bit. Then, a sudden realization hit me, and I shivered. Spring had arrived. The mating season for beasts. I wasn't exactly a saint, and my mind began to wander. I was about to wake her when I heard a noise outside. Something had triggered one of my traps. I immediately grabbed my spear. And peeked through the branches. Peering through the branches covering the cave entrance, I saw a massive man rolling around on the ground, clutching his foot in the bright moonlight. I instantly recognized that shiny bald head. It was the bear man. How on earth did he find my cave in the pitch black? "Wolf," he called out. I stayed silent, my hand tightly gripping my spear. If he came just one step closer, I'd strike him down without hesitation. "Wolf, come out," he called out again. Just then, Din, who had just woken up, crept over to my side, holding a spear of her own. I motioned for her to be quiet. The bear man limped to within 3 meters of the cave entrance. It seemed the sharpened stakes in my trap hadn't managed to pierce his foot. The bear folk were just incredibly tough. Even in his human form, he sniffed the air, confirming he'd found the right spot. Then, he said quietly, "I'm leaving." He had come to say goodbye in the dead of night, risking my traps just to warn me. I was deeply moved. If he had actually wanted to attack us, he could have done it weeks ago. "Where are you going?" I finally spoke up. His face lit up with joy when he heard my voice, but then it fell sad again. He pointed to the ground. "Wolf, your tribe, they're here. You must leave now." He was worried I'd get killed by my former tribe. He had braved the middle of the night just to warn me. I pushed the branches aside and stepped out, showing my face. He grinned, a massive, honest smile spreading across his face. I thought about everything that had happened. First being cast out by my own people, and now, having to lose my new home because of them. I swore to myself that I would remember this debt. Then, he pointed toward the east and tried desperately to explain something. "Two sunsets, water, you. He waved his arms wildly, but I still couldn't understand. He slapped his forehead in frustration, and suddenly transformed into a giant bear. Din and I both froze in shock. Then, he immediately shifted back. He pointed at me, then pointed east. "You go." No beasts, I finally understood. East of here, about 2 days' travel away, there were other beastiers here. People who couldn't transform. A whole group of outcasts, just like me. I nodded, whispering a thank you. He tilted his head, confused by the word. I smiled and tossed him the wooden spear that I'd carved for him yesterday. He picked it up, stared at the sharpened tip for a moment, then waved goodbye, and limped away into the cold moonlight. I almost asked him to stay, but bears are loners by nature, and we hadn't built enough trust for that yet. I watched him disappear into the darkness. Soon, spring arrived in full bloom. The wilderness turned lush and green everywhere, with herds of giant beasts roaming the open plains. 2 days' journey east, deep in the Ancestor Mountains, there was a peak that towered high above the rest. Halfway up, a massive round crater like an ancient volcano cradled a lake as blue as a gemstone. Dozens of caves dotted the crater walls. This was where the outcasts lived, families from many different bestial tribes, all of them unable to transform, had banded together to survive. Their leader was a tiger man. He couldn't shift forms, but he was incredibly strong. He could kill a wild wolf with his bare hands. His people had learned to dig caves, throw rocks, and hunt with bone clubs and heavy sticks. One day, the tiger leader took a dozen men downhill to hunt a herd of bighorn sheep. It was dangerous work. A single round charge could mean a fatal wound. They chased the herd until the old and young sheep fell behind, and then pelted them with stones. For once, the spring hunt was going well. But then, roars echoed from the east. 8 men with golden manes sprinted toward them. Lion-ear tribesmen, the tiger leader yelled in warning. The lion men didn't stop. They shifted into massive lions. They were bigger than any lion from my old world, and they charged. Rocks bounced off their thick hides like pebbles. The fight was brutal. The outcasts' wooden clubs couldn't do any real damage to the lions, but just one swipe of a lion's paw ripped flesh and snapped necks. As the men started running, the tiger leader stood his ground, dodging and landing. A solid hit on one lion's nose with his bone club, but his belly was slashed open in the process. Soon, he was completely surrounded. He gripped his club and looked around, his amber eyes full of despair. He was done running from this life. If he was going to die today, he'd take at least one of them down with him. The lions shifted back into their human forms just to mock him. One of them even urinated on him while the others laughed. The tiger man roared and charged, but he was too wounded to slow. He tripped and fell. Then, a heavy foot pressed his face deep into the dirt. The lion men clicked their tongues and cackled. Then, a spear came flying out of nowhere. None of them had expected it. One lion man looked down at the wooden shaft, sticking right through his gut, completely confused. What on earth was that? Instantly, the lions went berserk. They all shifted back into their beast forms, and roared in every direction, but they couldn't see anyone. Just the tall grass, swaying in the wind like green ocean waves. Nobody showed themselves. One lion grew impatient, and lunged toward the tiger leader to finish him off. But another spear flew out of the grass, and struck the lion right in the eye. It screamed in agony. The remaining lions spotted where the spear had come from, and charged, but found absolutely nothing. Just as they turned back, another spear flew in from a different angle, punching a hole clean through another lion's side. They had no idea what kind of enemy they were dealing with, and that scared them. A few roars to save face, and they bolted east. The wounded one limped after them without looking back. I stepped out of the grass. The tiger leader was lying on the ground, barely breathing. I knelt beside him and started pressing chewed up, true blood grass onto his belly wound. It was bad. A huge gash. I had nothing to stitch it with. He probably wasn't going to make it. He opened his eyes and stared at my face, then looked down at my spear. What is that? I was surprised he could speak in full sentences. A spear. His eyes flickered. You failed the beast transformation. Yes. He reached out and touched my forehead with his bloody hand, drawing a line across it. You tribesman. Just like that. I was accepted. The men around us cheered. Part of it was genuine warmth. These outcasts didn't have much, but their feelings were real. The other part was because of what they'd just seen. I'd practiced spear throwing for a long time, and combined with a little strategy, I'd scared off a whole pack of level 1 warriors. They'd never seen a spear before. Anything unknown is terrifying. Honestly, I had been ready to run the whole time. I never expected those lions to actually flee. We carried the wounded tiger leader up the mountain, along with the sheep they'd caught. I called Chinu out from her hiding spot. The two of us walked behind the group, carrying our belongings in bark, rope net bags on our backs. Everyone kept glancing at us curiously. When we reached the crater lake, halfway up the peak, Shiyu and I both stopped and stared. It was breathtaking. A round basin, probably formed by a meteorite long ago, shaped like a giant bowl. A blue lake filled 2/3 of it. Birds were circling and diving over the still water. We climbed down into the crater, along a natural dirt slope. The tribe lived in caves carved into the crater walls, some natural, some dug by hand. Each family had their own. I did a quick count. Maybe 60 or 70 people total. Mostly adults, with a handful of children. The product of families. These outcasts had formed on their own. A few Volfir men came over to look me up and down. The biggest one, with thick, gray fur on his arms and chest, pointed toward my old tribe's direction. Volf-ear. From there. I nodded. He broke into a grin and slapped my shoulder, then thumped his hairy chest. Same tribe. Fellow rejects from the Volfir clan. We shared the same blood, and the same shame. 2 Volfir women came forward, and helped me pick out a cave. I chose one with an entrance about 2 meters wide. Inside, it was dark, dry enough, but the floor was loose soil, and the whole thing was only about 4 meters deep, too close to the water for my liking. The dampness bothered me. We'll stay here a few days, I told Dinyu, then I'll try building a grass hut. As we stepped outside, the 2 Volf women gave Dinyu odd looks. A Volfir boy living with a rabbiteer girl. I could guess what they were thinking. I just smiled and nodded. A leopard-eared man walked over, carrying a massive sheep leg and a horn. He handed them to me, apparently as the one who'd saved the hunt. I got the biggest share. I noticed the leg had been broken off at the joint by smashing it with a rock. These people already use tools, just not refined ones. Getting them to use proper stone tools. Finding out his age wouldn't be hard. So I asked about the tiger leader instead. The leopard man sighed and shook his head. It was only a matter of time. After he left, the big, gray Volf man came back. He beat his chest right in front of me, declaring me leader. These primitive beastmen really had no filter. We'd only just met, and he was already campaigning. I just smiled, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. He stared greedily at the mutton leg in Chunyu's hands, clearly expecting me to share it. When I didn't, he stomped off in a huff, likely planning to put me in my place. Once he took charge, but honestly, I couldn't care less. I took Chunyu down to the lake. The water was crystal clear, and the shore was covered in smooth, rounded pebbles. I picked up a flat stone and skipped it effortlessly across the water's surface. Chunyu tried to copy me, but her stone just went plop and sank right to the bottom. She pouted, making me burst out laughing. So she stomped her foot in frustration and kept trying. But the real reason I had come to the lake was to check for fish. I couldn't go for a swim just yet, since the mountain water was still freezing cold, and summer was still weeks away. Just then, a large white bird answered my question. It dove headfirst into the lake, and burst back out a moment later, with a fat, thrashing fish clamped in its beak. I grinned. This place had everything we needed. Water, shelter, and food. We could really make this work. Chunyu and I returned from the lake, carrying loads of firewood and stones. Our plan was to build a fire and make some rope. Since I was shorter and lighter than the massive Volf man, he clearly didn't think I stood a chance. I understood the situation completely. I unslung my spear and took a step back. The giant Volf beat his chest aggressively. One of the Volf women handed him his weapon, a heavy club fashioned from a large animal's thigh bone, still stained with patches of old, blackened blood. He clearly planned to break my arm and force me to submit. I kept backing away, keeping a tight grip on my spear. Everyone thought I was scared. The big Volf roared, stepping forward with absolute confidence. Then I threw my spear. And he didn't even bother to dodge. He honestly thought a thin wooden stick couldn't hurt him. He just tried to swat it aside, but it was way too fast. Luck wasn't on his side today. The spear punched straight through his belly. He snarled, charging forward on pure, unadulterated rage, but his vision was already starting to blur. He swung his massive bone club right at me. I sidestepped it easily, and drove my second spear deep into his side, right where his kidney would be. The last burst of strength completely drained out of him. He dropped heavily to his knees, and fell face first into the dirt. The whole fight lasted maybe 10 seconds. Some people hadn't even processed what just happened. When they saw the big Volf lying there, dead, absolute fear spread across their faces. I looked coldly at the other Volf-feared men. Every single one of them lowered their heads. That's the Volf tradition. You lose. You submit. The leopard man walked over, and raised my hand high in the air. People all around us. The Volf-fears. The leopard ears. Everyone let out roaring shouts of approval. I walked over to the half-eaten sheep leg, picked it up, and tossed it to the 4 Volf-feared people, who'd been crouching on the ground, waiting for leftovers. To men and to women. They stared at me, completely stunned. Eat, I said. They grabbed the leg together and tore into it, overjoyed. Later that evening, I sat at the cave entrance, working my bow drill. I'd made fire several times by now, so it didn't take long. Kun, you carried water from the lake in our clay pot. The Vol feared. People crawled to the edges of their caves just to watch. When they saw the sparks appear, their eyes went wide with sheer terror. When the flame caught and began to grow, they started growling. Disaster. Other people from across the settlement came over to stare, but they kept their distance. Nobody dared to come any closer. They couldn't believe I was just sitting there so calmly, right next to an open fire. Out of all of them, the leopard man was the bravest. He crouched down beside me, his eyes locked onto the dancing flames. I looked at him and asked, "Aren't you afraid?" "I am. He admitted. "Fire is useful," I told him gently. "It won't spread. As long as you control it." He didn't quite understand my words, but he stayed anyway. I began stacking stones to build a simple stove, and set a clay pot on top of it. Once the water started boiling, Dinyu brought over some dried meat and dropped it in. Then, she crushed some blueberries and tossed those in as well. Soon, the rich aroma of meat soup drifted through the entire settlement. I could actually hear the onlookers swallowing their spit. The braver ones slowly crept a little closer, and a few children ran up behind Dinyu to sneak a peek. She noticed a little cat-eared girl, who was wearing a crown of flowers, and gently pulled her close, rubbing their cheeks together. I scooped up a small bowl of the hot soup, blew on it, and took a careful sip. It was absolutely wonderful. Just then, I heard a loud gulp beside me, so I handed the bowl to the leopard man. He copied me, blowing on it before drinking it all down in one shot. His eyes lit up instantly. Dinyu scooped up another bowl for the little cat girl. With just one taste, the child's eyes went wide with wonder, and she quickly drained the whole thing. That night, I shared the entire pot of soup with anyone who was brave enough to step forward. They looked at me with something far beyond fear now, something closer to absolute awe. It wasn't just because I'd taken down the wolfmen in seconds, but because I could create things they had never even imagined, like fire and hot soup. Cooked food. The next morning, I woke up right next to Dinyu. I'll admit, I'm just a normal man with normal desires, and the night before, I had finally let things go a little further between us. Not all the way, of course. But just a little. Gently, I stepped outside. And found the whole tribe gathered around a body, lying on the grass. It was the tiger-eared leader. He hadn't survived his wounds. I felt a deep, genuine sadness. I remembered how he'd stood his ground against those lions, ready to die fighting rather than run. Courage like that. Deserves respect. Following tradition, everyone worked together to collapse his cave over his body, burying him inside forever. When that was finished, the leopard man walked up to me, accompanied by several other men. Before I could even ask what they wanted, they all dropped to their knees and pressed their foreheads to the ground. The rest of the tribe followed, one after another, until every single person in the settlement was kneeling. The leopard man raised his head and shouted, "Leader." And just like that. Without planning it, without even asking for it, I became the chief of this tribe. You, the little cat girl, held up a clay bowl she'd shaped with her own hands, with mud smeared across her cute face. It had been 7 days since I became the leader. Shiyu had taken the little girl under her wing, combing her hair with a bone comb, and giving her a hot bath. Now, the kid looked clean and bright. Chenyu patted her head approvingly. "Good," she said, sounding just like me. The other 5 children crowded around, showing off their own clay pieces, and she praised every single one. Nearby, a dozen women sat quietly, braiding bark rope the way I had taught them. Chenyu kept glancing up at the crater rim, worried. I had taken the men out hunting, and we hadn't come back yet. We were half a day's walk from the lake, crouching in the tall grass, creeping toward a herd of wild cattle. Every man carried a spear. I'd spent the past several days teaching them basic throwing, and they'd picked it up well enough. We had no choice but to go after these cattle. Summer was approaching, and the herds near our mountain had moved north. The animals had learned our area was dangerous. Wild cattle were enormous and mean-tempered. Even beast-shifting tribes avoided them. But I believed that, with teamwork and spears, we could handle most large animals. 3 cattle had wandered away from the main herd, to graze under a big tree. On my signal, the leopard man, whom I'd named Jia, meaning swift, burst from the western grass with a yell, and threw his spear. He missed. But that wasn't the point. The 3 cattle panicked and stampeded east, straight toward us. When they got close enough, I stood up, and a dozen stone spears flew. At that range, Even tough cowhide couldn't stop them. 2 bulls took multiple hits, but they kept running. We jumped out, screaming and waving, which scared the cattle into turning west, away from their herd. That was exactly what I wanted. We chased them at a steady jog. No rush. Every time they tried to stop and rest, we threw more spears. Their wounds multiplied. They had to keep moving. By the time it was over, the sun had shifted well to the west. 1 bull escaped, but we kept the other 2, a big one and a smaller one. The men cheered, looking at me with genuine admiration. I ordered them to carry the kills home, for men could handle the small bull, while the big one took 6 or 7. We didn't make it back to the mountain before dark, so we camped under some large trees and lit fires. Wild animals stayed away. Fire terrified them down to their bones. Watch carefully. I showed everyone how to skin the small bull, keeping the hide as intact as possible. Cowhide was valuable. Treat it with wood, ash, and you've got basic leather armor. After all, I had been a veterinarian in my past life. Even I had only ever dissected sheep and pigs in the lab, and never cattle. I still did my best. I pulled out the organs and separated the tendons. Butchering was just another skill that I needed to teach the tribe. Being the leader meant there were endless things to manage, but good things grow slowly, like drifting clouds or opening flowers. This tribe would develop, one step at a time. I had no magic system, no outside help, just patience. Just stood beside me, gazing out over the endless grasslands. The wind rippled through the grass, under a sky packed with stars. I love this feeling. Did you have a tribe? I asked. He thought for a moment and shook his head. The leopard deer people were solitary. Their mothers raised them to adulthood, helped them attempt the beast transformation, and then sent them away, regardless of the outcome. Without beast powers, he couldn't survive alone against predators. So, he joined this group of outcasts. Leader. Teach me, he said. He wanted to learn to speak like I did, in full sentences, with real thoughts. I smiled. Okay. I pulled out my stone knife and started teaching him. Beginning with the names of tools, he was eager to learn. A lot like Chinyu in that way, though lately, Chinyu had gotten lazy. She kept sleeping all the time. Suddenly, wolf howls cut through the night. Jay and I jumped up, scanning the grasslands. The howling was close. A wild wolf pack was in the area. We weren't too worried, though. Wolves wouldn't attack a group our size, especially near a fire. Then, we heard bear roars mixed in with the howling. Everyone grabbed their weapons. That roar. It sounded familiar. I called for men to follow me toward the noise. The bear man had been having the worst luck imaginable. After losing his stream territory to my old wolf tribe, he'd been chased out of a forest, too. He wandered east, fighting wild beasts along the way. The wooden spear I'd given him worked beautifully. At first, his raw strength drove it right through anything, but eventually, it broke, and he had to rely on his beast form alone. He found a rocky hill with a natural cave up north, but before he could settle in, a saber-toothed tiger showed up. He was only a brown bear, not a cave bear. No match for that beast. Homeless once again, he headed south toward the Ancestor Mountains. But while hunting for food, a wild wolf pack ambushed him. They stole his kill and then chased him from daytime, straight through to nightfall. He'd already used up his transformation during the hunt, so he could only run. In a last, desperate burst, he shifted one final time, and killed one wolf with a single swipe, but that only made the pack angrier. His transformation ended. He stood bent over, hands on his knees, gasping, wounds covering his entire body. Wolves lurked in the grass around him. The pack leader emerged, a massive gray wolf, over 2 meters long, white fangs gleaming. It had waited for him to exhaust himself. Classic Wolf King strategy. The bear man beat his chest one last time and roared, ready to charge to his death. The Wolf King lowered its head, preparing to pounce, and then shouting erupted from every direction. The Wolf King flinched as my men burst from the grass. The bear man spun around, saw my face, and his entire expression flooded with joy. Wolf, he yelled. Then, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. He woke up inside something he had never seen before. Walls made of sticks and branches. But it wasn't a cave. It was a lean-to shelter I'd built 2 days ago, right after bringing the hunting party back home. The cave was too damp for someone with open wounds, so I had him carried out here instead. This man was truly unbelievable. He had at least 7 or 8 deep bite wounds, injuries that easily would have killed anyone else. But his bare blood gave him an insane rate of recovery and immune strength. For any other beastman, those would have been fatal injuries, but for him, they were just ordinary injuries. He tried to smile as I brought him a bowl of meat broth. His eyes practically glowed green with raw hunger. If he didn't eat soon, starvation would have finished what the wolves couldn't. No one else dared to go near him. Even Shinyu was too scared to feed him, so I did it myself. My people watched in absolute amazement as their leader sat calmly beside a man who could turn into a bear. Spoon-feeding him soup, he polished off 3 whole bowls, and the color finally returned to his face. I set the bowl down and stood up. "Rest and heal," I said. As I walked away, he called out, "Wolf ... I turned back and smiled. "My name is Emma. Just call me Emma." The 2 wild cattle, plus the wild greens that Shinyu and the other women had gathered, kept us well fed for several days. I used that time to sketch a plan on the cave wall, a rough schedule of everything that needed to be done. Every night before going to sleep, I taught Shinyu basic sewing using bone, needles and bark thread. Once she got the hang of it, she could teach the other women. The women had already braided plenty of bark rope, some of which I'd use to make a fishing net and try catching fish in the lake. As for the men, I picked 2 of the sharpest to learn pottery, while the rest would practice spear throwing and shaping stone tools. No one got to just sit around. But there was one thing I had to do personally: find salt. Without it, the tiny amount of sodium in meat simply wasn't enough. Our people were getting hungry quickly and soon grew weak. Salt was absolutely critical. "Chen, when you heard I was leaving again, you looked so worried." "How long?" "To ... maybe 3 days." "Not far," I said, gently stroking her hair. My plan was to track the mountain goats. They always know where the salt deposits are. It's a slow method, but it's reliable. 2 days later, I had the men drag a wooden raft, the one we'd built all the way down to the lake. The entire tribe gathered to watch. Once the water was waist deep, we pushed it out, and I climbed on. I grabbed a long pole and pushed off from the bottom. The raft began to drift toward the center of the lake. I stood up and shouted, and everyone cheered. Even ... They had absolutely no idea what floating on water was even good for. When the pole couldn't reach the bottom anymore, I stopped and pulled out the fishing net made of bark rope. It wasn't very big. I had tied drilled stones and bone weights along the edges. Recalling what I'd seen in videos, I threw the net out as hard as I could. It sank quickly ... and almost immediately, I felt the weight shift. Something was in there, but when I hauled it up, the bottom hadn't closed properly. Most of the fish just slipped right out. All I managed to catch was 1 medium-sized fish. I tried again and again, but ran into the same problems. Then, the bark rope started snapping. It wasn't strong enough, and wide gaps began opening in the net. I sat down on the raft and caught my breath, but I wasn't too disappointed. The theory was right ... I just needed better materials, some practice, and a little patience. I paddled back to shore with the wooden I'd prepared. Chen Yu and the tribe came down to meet me. I held up a clay jar with 3 fish inside. Even that was enough to get everyone incredibly excited. They couldn't believe I had actually caught fish ... without even going underwater. Back at camp, the bear man was gnawing on a fish head I'd left for him. He called me over, looking highly agitated, and pointed at his wounds ... some of which had already started to rot. I could tell he needed medicine. "You want me to find herbs for you?" When I said that, he nodded frantically. At least he understood the word for grass. Then ... he picked up a stick and started drawing on the ground. I expected some crude scratches, but what he drew was shockingly detailed. It was a perfect illustration of a plant, with every leaf and stem in its exact place. I just stared. This huge, scary-looking man could actually draw beautifully. He was like a tiger with the soul of an artist. He looked extremely pleased with my reaction. Apparently, he had been drawing since he was a child, all alone in the wilderness with no friends, sketching everything he saw with sticks in the dirt. I memorized the plant. "I'll go find it tomorrow. Stay put. I'll bring you some food." I warned him to behave, and he nodded obediently. He knew everyone here carried spears now, and he definitely didn't want to turn into a porcupine. I took 4 men with me on this trip: 2 Valfirs, 1 Durir, and 1 Katir. One of the Valfir men was quite young, maybe 2 or 3 years older than me, and probably kicked out of his pack recently. I named him Song. We checked the trap line we had set on the mountainside 2 days ago. Most of the traps were untouched, but 2 had been triggered, leaving a bit of blood behind. Still, whatever got caught had managed to escape. The traps definitely needed some improvement. Fortunately, the last one had a lucky catch: a small squirrel lying at the bottom. I tossed it to Song to carry as his trail food. A little further along, we spotted a large bird's nest up in a tree. The cat-ear man scurried up like it was nothing, and came back down with 2 chicks and several eggs. I passed on the eggs, but the others cracked them open, and gulped them straight down, looking deeply satisfied. This time, I didn't lead them down the main slope. Instead, we headed east, down the far side of our mountain and into a valley, tracking mountain goats. On the first day, we crossed a single mountain. We ran into a terrifying python and some wild rabbits, but found nothing useful. The second valley was crawling with snakes and insects. Everyone stayed on high alert. A single bite out here could mean death. Suddenly, the deer-ear man stopped by a bush, which was covered in strange, round, red flowers. They were ball-shaped and hollow inside. He sniffed them excitedly and started picking them, without even waiting for my command. Belly hurts ... Eat this, he explained with a grin. This was tribal knowledge passed down through his deer-ear tribe. These flowers were known to soothe stomach pain. Though I didn't know their exact medicinal properties, gathering medicine was never a waste of time. So, everyone pitched in to gather them. I climbed onto a boulder to scan our surroundings. The eastern mountainside was carpeted with wild flowers, with dandelion seeds drifting lazily through the air. Dandelions were incredibly useful, too, excellent for reducing inflammation. We'd already been digging them up around the lake, and tossing them into our meat soup. Just then, a dark shape flashed across the ridge above. I caught a fleeting glimpse of horns. Before it vanished, I called out to the others, and we sprinted after it. Our new bodies were far stronger than anything back on Earth. We could jog for half a day without even breaking a sweat. Panting, we finally reached the summit and looked up. Before us rose an even taller peak. Its sheer face split clean, as if sliced by a massive blade. A vertical wall of rock standing like a giant tombstone. Leader, Goat Song pointed up there. There, on a narrow ledge of the cliff face, stood a grayish-yellow, longhorn goat. It looked remarkably similar to the wild goats I'd seen in documentaries about the Tibetan plateau. Except for its ash-colored fur, the gray mountain goat stood on the cliff face, staring down at us without a hint of fear. It was incredibly confident. No clumsy, two-legged creature could climb up there. It was wrong of us, but we threw our spears anyway. Most of them missed, but one found its mark. The goat bled and tumbled off the rocky wall, crashing to the ground. The other goats panicked, scrambling higher up the cliff to escape, while my men grabbed the dead goat. I went to the rock face, and chipped off a piece with my stone knife. I licked it. It was mostly bitter, with just a faint hint of salt. Disappointing, but it was still something. I climbed higher, and knocked off several chunks to take home. Maybe boiling them down would produce actual salt crystals. I wanted to keep going past this razor-sharp peak, but Song and the others stopped me. Through gestures and broken words, they explained that the other side was a beast, shifting tribes' territory. These groups were everywhere. It seemed their intelligence, combined with their transformation abilities, put them firmly at the top of the food chain. With our supplies running low, I gave up and headed back. Once we had crossed 2 mountains, and could see our home peak in the distance, Song spotted something, and we all ducked into hiding. People were moving around the base of our mountain. I couldn't make out their faces or ears from this distance. I urged everyone to move fast. We needed to reach high ground before whoever it was started climbing. We sprinted to the pine forest on the mountainside, and crouched behind the boulders, watching the figures below work their way up. Lion-ears ... and dog-ears ... double quotes. Song's breathing went ragged. The dog ... Dogs, he meant. They weren't like earth dogs descended from wolves. These were a wild, savage canine species that every tribe despised. Hyena-eared people in their beast form. They were slightly smaller than wolves, with spotted brown, yellow fur, and vicious, protruding fangs. They were extremely aggressive, with noses sharper than a wolf's. They specialized in stealing food from other tribes. I recognized some of the faces among those lion-eared men. 8 of them ... They were the exact same ones I'd ambushed with spears, back when I saved the tiger leader. They'd brought a dozen hyena trackers to sniff us out. They were here for revenge. Song, run back and get everyone. He understood instantly and bolted up the mountain. Without looking back, I turned to the other 3. We hit them, throw our spears, then run straight into the forest. Got it. I pointed at the pine trees behind us. We'd reset our traps in there just a few days ago. Perfect for slowing down anyone chasing us. I had them spread out behind different boulders. I carried 3 spears, while everyone else had 2. 1 for throwing, and 1 for close combat. If it really came to that, The lead hyena was less than 50 meters away. When its black nose started twitching, it sensed something, letting out a low growl, and then it shifted. The whole pack behind it fanned out and transformed. Charging uphill, the lead hyena stopped at 30 meters, staring straight at my hiding spot. It stretched its neck, locking its eyes right onto me. The exact moment it opened its jaws, I threw my spear, but it dodged fast. Incredibly fast. My spear hit nothing but dirt. Cold sweat ran down my back. These things had terrifying reflexes, but the others threw theirs too, and the cat-eared man actually managed to hit one. The hyena's screech was awful, a grating, irritating sound. Run! I bolted for the pine forest. My 3 men followed close behind. Snarling and barking exploded, as over a dozen hyenas gave chase. Their burst speed was way beyond anything I'd expected. The barking got closer shockingly fast. We barely made it to the tree line. Even inside the forest, they didn't slow down. The cat-eared man was about to be caught. Without hesitation, he leapt onto a pine trunk and scrambled up, like a squirrel. Below him, 2 hyenas circled, barking. When they realized he was too high, they shifted back into human form. They had evolved enough to climb trees, but the instant they went human, the cat-eared man hurled a spear straight down. It punched clean through one climber's neck, and the man dropped dead. The second hyena man stumbled back in fear. Seeing that the cat-eared man had no more spears, he called to others over to climb after him, but the cat-eared man leapt to another tree, vanishing into the thick branches. These people had clearly never dealt with a cat before. Meanwhile, I was sprinting through the forest, leaping over a patch of ground. I had memorized it as one of our trap markers. I turned and grinned at the 3 hyenas chasing me. One of them surged forward with a burst of speed, its front paw hitting the camouflaged pit. The ground gave way, and it plunged inside, howling as the sharpened stakes impaled it. The other 2 skidded to a confused halt. While they hesitated, I hurled a spear. Another yelp sounded from a different direction, as more screams echoed through the forest. Our traps were working. The surviving hyenas panicked and huddled together, howling for one another. Then, the lion-eared men caught up behind them. Their leader, the one I'd call the Lion King, grabbed a hyena by the scruff with one hand. Track them, double quotes, the hyena whimpered. Another one spoke up, King. Our people are dying. The Lion King counted heads. Out of more than a dozen, only 7 hyenas remained. He looked around at the dark, silent pines, then threw the hyena to the ground, and walked over to one of our trap sites. He peered down at the dying hyena in the pit, then pulled my spear from a dead body nearby. He ran his massive hand along the bloody shaft. Something changed in his eyes. A spark of understanding, of interest. Then, he hurled the spear with terrifying force. It buried itself deep into a pine trunk, 20 meters away. His men stared in shock, but the Lion King only smiled. He ordered his people to collect every single spear they could find. He wasn't going to chase us today. He'd go home, study these weapons, and come back. Song arrived with reinforcements. Just as my group of 4 met up on the far side of the forest, I was praising the cat-eared man. Cool under pressure, quick thinking. A natural fighter, definitely worth investing in. Jill looked us over, relieved that nobody was hurt. I watched the trail behind us. Nobody followed. I sent the cat-eared man to scout, and he confirmed the enemy had left. But one thing made my stomach tighten. All our spears were gone. Every single one we'd thrown. The Lion King had taken them. He now knew what spears were. He'd felt their weight and balance. A man that strong, leading warriors who could transform into lions, armed with our own weapon design. That was a serious threat. I thought about the cowhides drying back at camp. We needed armor. The age of just hunting and gathering was over. If we couldn't defend ourselves, nothing else mattered. Making stone axes was brutal work. 3 men ground away at selected rocks, day and night. I carved a handle from an arm-thick branch, burned a groove into it, using animal hair and grass as fuel, then chiseled it wider with a stone tool. 2 days for just 3 axes. I taught the men to chop pine trees, and put the deer-eared man in charge of lumber. Then, I went to spend time with the women, not for the reason you'd think. On the far side of the lake, Chunyu and the women had found a thorny vine. While picking berries, it was flexible and tough. I got an idea. I lined up some thumbstick. I laid thick sticks side by side, wrapped a thorny vine tightly around them, and then covered both sides with cowhide. The women had started tanning more hides lately. I wound another thorny vine around the edges, punched 2 holes right through the middle, and threaded cowhide straps through to make a handle. You might wonder, Why not carve a proper wooden shield? Well, because my stone tools couldn't split planks from a log. Doing that would take forever, but luckily, the women picked up the tanning process fast. Chinyu even copied my design and made one herself. I named it the Thorny Cowhide Shield. I grabbed one of the finished shields, which was about half a meter wide and 1 meter tall, then stood out in the field. I spotted the little cat girl, chasing bugs in the grass with the other kids. I gave a quick whistle. She looked up with her permanently serious face and trotted over. I handed her a rock. Hit me, but she didn't understand. I backed up 5 meters, raised the shield, and yelled, "Throw it!" She shrugged, tossed the stone twice in her palm, and then threw it with perfect form. The rock smacked straight into my thigh. I hissed in pain. This kid was way stronger than any child her age. Back on Earth, aim for the head, I shouted, rubbing my leg. She hesitated, worried about hurting me, but I insisted. She picked up another stone and let it fly. It cracked loudly against the shield. Test passed. Next, I had Chinyu throw a spear. She was absolutely terrified. Rabbit beasts are born timid, but I made her do it anyway. The spear thudded into the shield. Pass. Then, I called the cat-eared man over. He threw from 20 meters. His first shot missed, but the second one hit dead center. I moved closer to run some more tests. That's when I noticed the little cat girl, standing right beside me. Before I could tell her to move back, she spoke up in her soft, quiet voice. "Just put that thing on a wooden post." I blinked in surprise, then burst out laughing. She was right, I could just hang the shield on a post, instead of holding it up myself. Why was I thinking like a total caveman? My brain was turning too much. That stupid rabbit girl. Our nightly activities were seriously draining my intelligence. Starting tomorrow, strict abstinence it is. She had absolutely no idea that she'd just been blamed for my dropping IQ. I ruffled the cat girl's hair. Clever girl. Now, for the final test results. My own full-strength spear throw could only pierce the cowhide shield from within 5 meters. That wasn't because the shield was incredibly strong. It was just that stone spears aren't all that powerful. I increased the patrols and assigned the cat-ear man permanently to the pine forest. As a lookout, no more hunting duties for him. The lion tribe's revenge never came. While we waited, I trained 5 men in shield and spear combat. Basic moves, shield up, and thrust forward. Simple but effective. During this time, Chenyu found the herbs that the bear man needed. I dried them and stored them in a clay jar. I was slowly building up a medicine collection, recording what each plant did, combining my own knowledge with what various tribe members could remember. We now had 7 plants with confirmed uses, but food was still our top priority. Hunting alone wouldn't sustain us through the winter. I needed to try raising animals, and I still hadn't solved our salt problem. As for those gray-black rocks I brought back, I boiled them and filtered out the grit, then boiled them again. In the end, I actually managed to get a tiny amount of crude salt crystals, but a pot of salted fish soup was mostly consumed by the bear man. I let him have it. I needed him healthy, and it actually worked. He was already jogging along the lakeshore. The night before the hunt, Chenyu sat in our cave, weaving grass sandals by the firelight. Lately, all the women had been working on footwear. Our beastskin skin was tougher than normal human skin, and years of walking barefoot had built up thick calluses. But sharp objects could still draw blood. I'd also been pushing everyone to stay a bit cleaner. Early summer had arrived, and I bathed in the lake regularly. The others didn't exactly love bathing, but at least they'd rinse their mouths after eating, and pick meat out from between their teeth. "Are you going down to Din tomorrow?" she asked quietly, her ears drooping. "Yeah, but just nearby. I won't go far." Hum. She kept working, refusing to look up. Something was definitely off. I scooted closer and grabbed her fluffy little tail. She let out a soft squeak and turned her red, watery eyes toward me. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated, then asked softly, "You don't want to mate with me?" I froze. "The other women say," double quotes, she continued, that if we share a cave, we must mate." I wanted to laugh, but caught myself. By their standards, she was already an adult, so I couldn't exactly tell her she looked too young. She waited for an answer. When I remained silent, she turned back to her sandals, completely ignoring me. But then, I wrapped both arms around her from behind. The next morning, I stepped out of the cave and stretched with a tired groan. She was far more wild than I'd ever imagined. She nearly broke my back. Rabbits really are fearsome creatures. I whistled, and within moments, 10 people assembled on the grass below. 5 of them carried shields and spears, with stone hammers or axes hanging from their waists. The other 5 each carried 3 spears on their backs. Move out. Fortunately, luck was on our side. We soon came across a rare herd of mountain deer, right at the base of the hill. I wasn't alone anymore. No matter how impressive the led stag's antlers looked, they couldn't stop 11 armed hunters. Working together, we killed for deer, and captured a live fawn that had just been weaned. I carried it back to camp over my shoulders. 3 days later, after a rainstorm, a rainbow arched over the lake. The children played on the shore, taking turns petting the little deer on a leash. The fawn's leg had been broken during the hunt, trampled by panicking adults in its own herd. Not by us. I couldn't set the bone, but as long as someone fed it, it would grow, and then we'd eat it. A good investment. During those 3 days, Chen Yu and I didn't leave our cave much. Call it a honeymoon, call it a vacation. She was enthusiastic, especially when I grabbed her ears every morning. The fox-skin bedding had to be hung out to dry, but I couldn't let comfort make me soft. I reminded myself to stay alert. Stay prepared. It was time for my second salt expedition. Our food supplies were solid. The men had set traps all over the mountain and the pine forest. Most of the tribe could stay home with decent defenses. I only took 2 people this time. The deer-eared man and the bear man, whom I'd finally named. I called him Chuomo. Why that name? Pure mischief on my part. It sounded close to my own name, Chinamo. The bear man was delighted. Having a name that resembled his friend's made him grin from ear to ear. The 3 of us headed west with weapons and supplies. 2 days out, 2 days back. We couldn't stay away too long. If someone raided our home while we were gone, we'd be in real trouble. Under clear skies, on a beautiful day on a grassy mountainside, a few bighorn sheep were running for their lives. A spear flew from behind. It went clean through the entire body of a sheep, turning it into a giant meat skewer. I looked at Chumo, who was whooping and hollering, and had to admit, you really are strong. His effective throwing range was well over 50 or 60 meters. The only limiting factor was the stone spearhead. Beyond that distance, it lost its lethal force. With a bit of practice, this bear man would become a devastating weapon on any battlefield, without even needing to transform. Chumo thumped his chest proudly and ran over to claim his prize. Dear Ming, the name I'd given the deer-eared man, walked behind me, carrying a woven backpack. We were doing pretty well for day 1. Besides gathering some medicinal herbs, we had already caught 2 colorful pheasants. Dear Ming, you're on fire duty tonight, I said, patting his shoulder. He was a thoughtful guy, and I had been giving him increasingly complex tasks. On purpose, he took the fire-making duty as a sign of trust, which it was. Soon, we found a good spot to camp. I coached Dear Ming through using the bow drill, while Chumo worked on skinning the sheep. With his stone knife, he was trying to copy my technique, cutting a small hole near the leg, and blowing air under the skin to separate it from the meat. But then, his knife snapped. He grumbled and wandered off to find a better stone. When he came back, he was carrying something that made me do a double take. A dark green rock the size of a football. Jade, I blurted out. Chew. Emo had already raised it over his head, ready to smash it to get some sharp fragments. Chumo, stop, don't smash it. In my old world, I would have been thrilled. That was a fortune in jade. Here, though, it was just another rock. Actually, jade is brittle and fractures into extremely sharp edges. Historically, people made jade blades and weapons long before the advent of metal. The jade shattered, and Chumo picked up a fragment, testing its edge. It sliced through the grass at his feet like butter. His eyes lit up. No sharpening needed. He went straight back to the sheepskin, working away with his new jade cutter. I collected the remaining pieces, put 2 larger chunks in Yiming's basket, and sat down to carefully shape one small piece with my miniature stone hammer. Suddenly, Yimeng let out a cheer. He had made a fire on his own for the very first time. The smell of roasting lamb filled the hillside with an incredible aroma. Small predators lurked in the nearby bushes, but they wouldn't dare come close. They could smell the bear's scent on Chimu. I chewed on a roasted leg while keeping watch. That's when I noticed a figure on the slope below us. I nudged Chimu with my foot and lifted my chin to point them out. He squinted. I can't see. A bear's eyesight is famously terrible, after all. Yiming couldn't see clearly either. The Wing tribe's vision wasn't much better. Even in human form, their animal bloodlines still affected their senses. Let me go, Chimu offered. No, I stopped him. If they don't come any closer, we don't bother them. Whoever was out there alone was probably a beast. Shifter, there was no point in picking a fight we might not win. We finished eating and moved on, tracking herbivore trails and mapping the area. After we left, I was sure someone crept to our campsite. I had felt those eyes on us the whole time. That night, my evolved vision caught a faint glow behind a boulder. Further uphill, they were still there. I muttered, and Chimu growled. "Let me go." "No," I said, pressing his shoulder down. Whoever it was had been watching us all day. We might be on their territory, and maybe I could learn something from them. I had Yiming build another fire and roast more meat. The fire was like a lonely lamp in the vast, dark wilderness. Strange animal calls echoed from the mountains, but nothing dared approach the light. The roast lamb smelled absolutely irresistible. I stared at the boulder, where I'd spotted that faint glow. I grabbed a chunk of meat and threw it as hard as I could, about 50 or 60 paces uphill. Then, I sat down and waited. Brother Ming was exhausted and fell asleep. Chuema and I, two nocturnal predators, stayed wide awake. Bears and wolves come alive at night. When Brother Ming opened his eyes near dawn, every hair on his body stood on end. Someone was squatting right in front of him. Gnawing on a rib bone, he tensed, then saw me sitting there, smiling at the stranger. He let out a breath. It was a leopard-eared girl, but different from Yep back home. Her ears were small and grayish-white, and she had a big, fluffy, gray, and white cylindrical tail, a snow leopard bloodline. I'd lured her in with 3 pieces of meat. Over the course of the night, she'd circled us warily for a long time, before gathering the courage to approach. Up close, I could see why she'd risked it. Her canine teeth were all gone, broken or knocked out. She was filthy, and so weak, probably unable to hunt anymore. She didn't say a word, just ate silently ravenously. When Brother Ming sat up, she grabbed the rib bone in her teeth, and bolted into the darkness. I shot Brother Ming an annoyed look. He scratched his head sheepishly. "Leader you sleep. I'll keep watch." I dozed until dawn. The snow leopard girl was gone. We pushed deeper southwest into the Ancestor Mountains. After climbing over a granite peak, we found a canyon at least 34 paces wide, with a stream running through it. I crouched at the water's edge and looked north. This stream might connect to the area where I'd lived. Near my old cave, we'd traveled quite a distance. "Leader double quotes," Brother Ming whispered. Up the narrow path on the north side of the canyon, several bighorn sheep appeared. Strangely, they didn't run. They just stood there, watching us. Then, more appeared behind them and more. Finally, several tall, muscular figures emerged, men with sheep ears and small, curved horns on their heads. The rock sheep tribe 7 of them. My 3 companions instinctively backed toward the eastern slope, ready to bolt if things went wrong. We stared at each other in silence. 3 sheep-eared men walked toward us. Their leader was a wall of muscle, shirtless, his tan skin gleaming. He stopped about 30 paces away and barked. "My territory, leave." Chomo didn't care about being outnumbered by herbivores, he snarled, and transformed into a brown bear. Roaring at full volume, the sheep herd stumbled backward. The men's faces darkened. I stepped forward. "I'm looking for salt. Once I find it, I'll leave." They froze. My fluent speech caught them completely off guard. They'd only ever heard that kind of language from powerful tribal shamans. The leader spoke again, sounding confused. "What salt?" I smiled, and pulled a piece of the dark rock from Deer Ming's pack, then tossed it over. The man picked it up, sniffed it, then instinctively licked it. Understanding crossed his face, though he still seemed puzzled. Meat-eaters rarely sought salt the way his people did. Then, his eyes flicked involuntarily toward the deeper part of the canyon. I caught it immediately. That's where the salt was. These people came here specifically to lick salt deposits. No rush, then. Even if they refused to help, I could just wait until they left and explore the canyon myself. I turned to lead my men away. "Trade," the man said. Suddenly, I searched my memories and found the word. My Volf King father had done trades before, exchanging things with other tribes. I nodded. The sheep leader inched closer, still nervous about Chumo's bear form. He struggled through a long explanation. With words and gestures, he basically explained. There was a leopard a predator in this area that threatened them whenever they came for salt. Deal with it, and he'd share the salt source. I thought of the little snow leopard girl from last night toothless, starving, desperate. She was probably the terrifying predator they meant. These big, tough sheep men were scared of a girl who couldn't even bite anymore. I didn't hesitate. I smiled. Deal. The massive sheep herd marched deeper into the canyon, with us trailing behind. The sheep-herd leader had basically hired us as bodyguards. Before long, a waterfall appeared, a silver ribbon pouring down the cliff face, at least 5 or 6 meters wide. The sheep people grew tense. 7 or 8 sheep-herd warriors fanned out on both sides of the herd, scanning the canyon walls for danger. Then, the sheep did something amazing. They leapt onto boulders, flanking the waterfall, and disappeared straight through the water curtain, a cave behind the waterfall. I couldn't help thinking of the old Chinese legend, the water curtain cave. This was the most dangerous moment for the herd. They had to enter single file, stretching into a long, vulnerable line. A perfect time for a predator to strike. I was sure the cave held what I wanted, but I didn't rush in. I sat down with Chumo and chewed on some dried meat, watching carefully. And sure enough, I spotted a sneaky figure lurking among the rocks above. The sheep moved quickly, and soon, they started leaping back out through the waterfall, landing gracefully on the boulder platforms, before jumping down to drink from the stream below. But just when everything seemed to be going smoothly, a gray-white blur exploded from the tall grass above the boulders. It was a snarling snow leopard, pouncing right onto a sheep that had just landed. In that instant of absolute chaos, Chomo moved. He instantly transformed into his massive bear form, and let out a thunderous roar that shook the canyon walls, charging straight toward the boulders. The snow leopard took one look at the charging bear, and abandoned her prey, bolting away. Chomo shifted back to his human form, grinning like an idiot. I'd told him beforehand to only scare her, nothing more, and it turned out, I had guessed right. It was the exact same snow leopard girl from the night before. As she fled, she looked back at me with a gaze full of hurt, betrayal, and deep resentment. She couldn't understand why meat-eating predators like us would protect a bunch of sheep. Afterwards, the sheep-herd leader approached us, coming even closer than before, maybe 3 or 4 meters away. He gave a nod and offered us a small, genuine smile. Our deal was fulfilled. After the herd left, Dear Ming looked totally confused. Leader, why did we do that? I patted his shoulder. He was smart enough to figure it out eventually. The sheep came to this place specifically for the salt. He could have easily tracked them through the canyon himself to find this place. You'll understand later, I told him. But the real reason was far bigger than that. I needed allies, and the sheep herd roamed far and wide, all controlled by their sheep-herd leaders. They had immense value, especially when I thought about setting up animal husbandry down the road. If we help them now, we build a solid relationship and reap the benefits later. Let's head inside. A few minutes later, the 3 of us were standing inside a damp, misty cave hidden right behind the waterfall. The walls were coated in white, frosty salt crystals. We chipped off chunks with our tools. Dear Ming. Well, he couldn't resist licking the wall directly. The cave wasn't very wide, maybe 4 or 5 paces, narrowing even more the deeper it went. But we didn't need to explore any further. We already had exactly what we came for. We left immediately and marched hard back toward home. By my count, we'd been gone since the evening of day 2. It would take at least another full day to reach the lake. I sensed someone following us the entire way. I didn't react. I just kept walking. We pushed on, deep into the night, before Dear Ming finally hit his limit. And we had to stop. This time, we had roast pheasant sprinkled with our freshly crushed salt. The taste was incredible, a little bitter still, but after weeks of bland, stinking meat, I nearly cried with satisfaction. Once Shumo and Dear Ming closed their eyes, a shadow appeared at the very edge of our firelight. It was the snow leopard girl, staring at me with pure fury in her eyes, like she might spring and attack at any second. I gently tossed a piece of chicken toward her. She wasn't actually going to fight. She hadn't even shifted. She just sat down and started eating. One piece wasn't enough, though. She crept a little closer, so I threw another, and then another. Piece by piece, she ended up sitting, just 3 or 4 meters across the fire from me, her eyes half closed. As she chewed contentedly, I stood up and slowly walked toward her. She hissed, baring her remaining teeth, her fluffy tail swishing in warning. But she didn't run. Stop hunting those sheep, I said gently. It's too dangerous. I could see fresh bruises on her face, a swollen lip, and another tooth missing. The sheep-ear warriors had beaten her. She turned her head away, crunching the chicken bones. Loudly, I softened my voice. Come with us. I'll give you food. She paused mid-bite. And I could see the hesitation in her eyes. Then she dropped the half-eaten bone and bolted into the darkness. Solitary predators rarely accept group life. She probably feared I'd enslave her. I wasn't too disappointed, though. Chuomo had been an exception. I couldn't expect every loner to be like him. But the next day, on our way back, I realized I was wrong. She was still following us, quietly keeping her distance. But she was definitely following, back at the lake. I was relieved to find that the loners hadn't attacked while I was gone. Maybe they decided we weren't easy prey. My first priority was processing the salt. I broke up the rock salt, boiled it in water, let the grit and sediment settle, poured off the clear liquid, and boiled it again until salt crystals formed. It was still crude. We had no cloth for filtering, no paper, and no way to filter out harmful minerals. But our bodies were tough. Ancient humans survived on rough salt for thousands of years. We could handle it for now. I stored the salt in clay jars inside my cave and didn't hand it out to everyone right away. Instead, I set up a reward system. Work hard, fight bravely, contribute to the tribe, and you earn salt. The ones who had gone hunting with me got their share first. Daming and Chuomo each got a small jar. Once people tasted the salted fish soup, everything changed. The flavor was on a whole other level. Word spread fast, and everyone suddenly started working much harder. Knowing salt was the ultimate prize. After one day of rest, I started my first real construction project. In this world, without metal tools, building anything from wood was painfully slow. Stone axes could only do so much. I was right in the middle of chopping when the little cat girl marched up to me, accompanied by a group of pale-faced children. They were all talking at once, too terrified to form proper sentences. I set down my axe and turned to the little cat girl. I reached out and gently tapped her forehead with my finger. She was much calmer than the others. The leopard-eared girl swallowed hard, and, gesturing as a beast girl, pointed across the lake. And then, I remembered. I had completely forgotten about the snow leopard girl. She must have followed us all the way back. I gently patted the cat girl's head. It's okay. Lead the way. Over on the west side of the lake, there were a few large spruce trees, where the kids loved to play. They had gathered piles of pretty stones, and had even molded little clay sculptures. I was quite impressed. They were having fun while building useful skills. I sat beneath the trees with the little cat girl, and started a fire to roast some venison. Sure enough, the snow leopard girl appeared on the crater rim above, crouching there and staring down at us with hungry eyes. I waved her over, but she just stared at me warily. Seeing only the small cat girl beside me, she decided it was safe enough to come down. She came down and began to eat quietly. The little cat girl watched her closely, and then her eyes drifted to the leopard girl's chest. She looked down at her own flat chest, and I caught the envious look on her little face. I didn't ask the leopard girl for her opinion, and simply started building a small shelter, right there beneath the spruce trees. The cat girl helped me tie the tree bark ropes, while the leopard girl lay on a pile of rocks, watching us lazily. By the afternoon, the shelter was finished, a simple A-frame structure, covered with leafy branches and lake moss. To make it waterproof, I had the cat girl fetch a sheepskin. I laid fresh grass inside, spread the skin on top, and said, "This is yours," pointing at the shelter for the leopard girl. She acted aloof, pretending she didn't care much for it. But as soon as I walked away with the cat girl, she crawled inside, and the comfort hit her immediately. With a soft smile, she quickly fell asleep. 20 days went by, and the summer heat finally settled in. People were splashing and playing in the lake, and right there on the shore stood two wooden cabins. My very first real construction project in this world. Each one was about 9 square meters. I had made a simple measuring stick, just a piece of wood I'd cut to roughly 1 meter. Since I made it from memory, it wasn't perfectly accurate, but it didn't really need to be. The men just matched their lumber to my stick and cut it, and just like that, that stick became our tribe's first ruler. The walls were built from 4-meter logs, each about 1 palm wide, with 1 meter buried underground for stability. For the floor, we laid down a layer of logs as thick as my arm, packing baked mud into the gaps, and then we topped it off with animal skins. The roof gave me a lot of trouble at first. A flat roof wouldn't drain the rain, so I built a triangular peak on top instead, like a tent covered in wood, animal hides, and moss. I even built a small fireplace inside, coping what I remembered from survival videos in my past life. Surprisingly, it actually worked pretty well. One cabin was mine, and the other belonged to the 6 children. For now, nobody argued about this arrangement, but I was really struggling with another project. A bow. I'd been trying to make a long bow, using cattle sinew for the bowstring, and jade chips for the arrowheads, but the results were so disappointing. My absolute best arrow only flew about 34 meters. The wood was wrong, the string was wrong. I needed more time. Why couldn't I have gotten a cheat system? I yelled, flopping face first onto the grass. Every single novel I'd ever written gave the hero some kind of magical system. So where was mine? Just then, Chin Vu's face appeared above me, upside down. Sweetheart, they're back. The hunting party had returned. I had handed the leadership of the hunt over to Jia. After leading several hunts myself, as the chief, I had way too many things to manage. But Jesh hadn't let me down. 2 successful hunts in a row, both with great hauls. He came up to me holding 2 greenish-gray wild chickens. Chief, they're still alive. I was pleased. I'd specifically asked him to bring them back alive. Our little farm was slowly growing, with a limping fawn and 3 goats in a pen I'd built. The goats kept trying to escape, but they always got caught. Once they bred, their offspring would be much tamer. The fawn was actually very well behaved. Did you run into any other tribes? I asked. Jess shook his head and thumped his chest. Chief, even if we did, we're not scared. His speech had improved dramatically. In his free time, he'd been gathering everyone on the grass for group language lessons, starting with the names of tools and working their way up to full sentences. The whole tribe was finally learning to talk properly. I squatted down and yanked the flight feathers from the wings of both chickens. They screeched. Jay and Chinny stared at me, completely confused. If we're going to breed them, they can't keep their flight feathers. That was step 1. Every chick they hatch would get the same treatment. Eventually, I'd build a roofed chicken coop. I thought the summer would pass quietly, but then, Shuomo returned from a solo hunt with bad news. Chief... The cave bears are coming. Cave bears, the ancient ancestors of brown bears and black bears. They weren't fully extinct in this world. Every summer, they wandered south from the north, looking for mates to continue their bloodline. Some had even evolved into beast people, possessing human forms and higher intelligence, which made them even more dangerous. When cave bears roamed the area, hunting became nearly impossible. The herbivore herds would flee, and food would become scarce. I didn't want to pick a fight with cave bears. I wasn't even confident we could stand against the Lioneer tribe, let alone creatures whose hides could probably stop our spears. In the memories of my old tribe, the Volfiers, we always fled west whenever cave bear season arrived, hunting elsewhere. After all, the mountains have plenty of food. I told the tribe we don't need to go down to the plains, and that we'll be fine. But then, she came to me with the worst news. When cave bears come, they demand human sacrifices. What? He explained it to me slowly. The cave bears didn't just come for mating season. Their old shamans came too, to perform transformation rituals for their young. And those rituals required sacrifices from nearby tribes, both animals and people. Specifically, people who had failed their own beast transformations. After the ritual, the cave bears ate the sacrificed people alive. Every year, this tribe had sent several hunted animals, and to failed beast shifters as tribute. The ones sent... never came back. I sat there for a long moment, processing this. So, that's what this was. Protection money. A primitive shakedown, pay up, or get destroyed. The Beast World version of a protection racket. I talked with Jay and learned the full story. This tribe's territory only existed because of a deal made years ago. Their first leader had been a failed cave bear shifter, but his father, a true cave bear, had scared off the surrounding beast-shifting tribes, just so his reject son could survive. In gratitude, that first leader voluntarily sent tribute every year. Over time, it became a tradition. But after leadership passed to non-bear people, the demands only grew heavier. What started as a thank you gift became a nightmare. I sat quietly for a long time, watching my people work and laugh around the lake. Then I said, traditions exist to be broken. This ends now. Jed didn't fully understand, but I could see a flicker of hope in his eyes. Chomo didn't even bother to think about it. He had decided a long time ago that wherever I went, he would follow. But I wasn't stupid. We couldn't fight cave bears head-on. After hours of thinking alone in my cabin, I came to a conclusion. The best strategy was to leave. Honestly, I could never love this crater lake as a permanent home. Besides, real civilization always grows alongside rivers. Better water, better soil, and better land for farming. But convincing everyone to abandon the only safe place they had ever known, that was a delicate matter. My authority was high, but not absolute, not yet. I was deep in thought when I suddenly realized the cat girl had fallen asleep on my lap. Chinyu walked in, saw her there, and scooped her up. With a jealous pout. The cat girl made a confused noise, which snapped me right out of my planning. What are you doing? I asked. It's dark, Chinyu said pointedly. I noticed she was right, night had fallen. I smiled. My rabbit girl was in heat basically all year round. And honestly, I was starting to feel a bit worn out. Let the cat sleep here tonight, I said. Chin, you wasn't happy, but she didn't argue. The cat girl yawned, hopped lightly back into my lap, and passed out again. Chin, you sat across from me, and brought up something interesting. The other side of the ancestor mountains. My tribe. What about your tribe? Someone left with me. Around the same time, he disappeared. She pointed south, past the mountain range. I leaned forward. You crossed the mountains from the other side. She nodded and counted on her fingers, struggling with the numbers as usual. Despite my lessons, 6. No. 7 days. I crossed. 6 or 7 days. For a little rabbit girl, alone through the wilderness. If she could make it, our whole tribe certainly could. I asked her about the land on the other side. Her memories were mostly of living in a hillside cave, with her mother and family. But one thing made her eyes light up. Fruit. Food. So much that she started drooling, just remembering the fruit grove she'd passed through. I patted her back and listened, but my mind was already forming a plan. Before we could build anything real, we needed to get away from this side of the mountains. The open wilderness was too dangerous, especially in winter. The next morning, I took a team of 11 down the mountain to scout the plains. Jay and the hunters had become skilled spear throwers. 6 carried cowhide shields. Jay and I wore leather vests. We were starting to look like a real fighting force against the lion-ear tribe. I now felt we could hold our own, but the plains below were empty, not a single herd in sight. Just as Jay had warned, every summer when cave bears arrived, the animals fled. We walked north for half a day and reached a river 3 or 4 meters wide. Some antelope lingered near the bank. They sensed us and leapt across the water. Our spears flew before they got far. One antelope went down, bristling with shafts. I wasn't looking at the antelope, though. On the far bank, a yellowish brown rock was slowly crawling toward the water. A giant land tortoise, nearly a meter across. I pulled my stone axe from my belt and hurled it. It cracked against the shell, right where the head had been. But the tortoise sucked its head in just in time, and froze. One of my men dove into the river, crossed in 3 strokes, and pinned the tortoise with his foot. He stabbed down with his spear, and the shaft snapped against the shell. He grabbed his stone hammer in sheer frustration, ready to smash it. But I yelled for him to stop. Just bring it over. He heaved a massive tortoise across the river to us. Meanwhile, the others were struggling to carry the antelope across, when a deafening, trumpeting blast split the air. The ground started trembling. Elephants. Jeff's face went completely tight. Leader. Should we run? But I didn't move. I just stood there, with one foot on the tortoise, and looked north. A massive stampede of animals was charging straight toward the river. All kinds of beasts were running together, and right behind them, a dark, imposing line stretched across the horizon. As it got closer, the line resolved into enormous, towering shapes. They weren't mammoths. These were elephants completely covered in white fur. Massive creatures. Standing over 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with bodies 5 or 6 meters long. A whole herd of them. Yeah. Have these things ever come here before? No. Double quotes. He shook his head. Everyone was coiled like a spring, ready to bolt. I couldn't help but wonder if elephant-ear people actually existed, when several leopards suddenly sprinted right past us, ignoring us completely in their sheer panic. The ground shook even harder now. Then, I noticed. Right in front of the elephant herd, a group of people were actually driving the animals ahead of them, herding the chaos. Leader, fall back, I finally ordered. We retreated about 100 meters, and crouched down in the tall grass to watch. Suddenly, from the west, came a thunderous, bone-chilling bear roar. I quickly sent Jay and the main group further back, then took 2 men with me to go see what was happening. Just a few hundred meters away on the south bank, a colossal brown bear was facing down to white-furred elephants. This bear was at least 4 meters tall. Standing upright, it towered over the elephants by a full head, but the elephants were much longer and heavier, 5 or 6 meters of pure, solid mass. They stared the giant cave bear down, clearly trying to force it out of their way. Then, several of the elephants lost patience. They splashed aggressively across the river and charged. The cave bear's body instantly shrank, shifting back into a massive, hairy man who turned and ran straight toward us. Even in human form, a cave bear man could easily outrun elephants. That's when they gave up the chase. Those two elephants that had been facing off with the bear. They also shrank down, turning into two tall women. Standing at least 2 meters tall, they calmly reached out and stroked the agitated elephants. Beside them, soothing them, women of the elephant ear tribe, and they just chased off a cave bear. Like it was absolutely nothing. I didn't stick around to watch the elephants, though. The cave bear man had run to within 100 meters of us, facing north, keeping his eyes on those white-furred giants. I carefully weighed our options. According to Chomo, beast shifting had strict daily limits, no more than 3 transformations a day, with each lasting roughly as long as a hunt. Larger forms meant shorter durations and fewer shifts. If this cave bear man could still transform, we'd be in deep trouble. I was just about to get out of there, when sudden wolf howls erupted from the west. On a massive boulder in the open grassland stood a man draped in wolf skin, his face painted with blood-red patterns. The wolf tribe shaman. My old tribe was here, too. Something big was definitely brewing on these plains. Hearing the wolves, the cave bear man bolted south. I quickly took my men and got the hell out of there. That night, back at the lake, I told the cat-eared man to keep a very close watch on the plains. If there was any chance to profit from whatever was about to happen, I wanted to be the first to know. Chenyu had dinner ready, hot mushroom and meat soup. The locals knew exactly which mushrooms were safe to eat, so I didn't have to worry about food poisoning. Suddenly, a shadow appeared on my rooftop. I didn't even flinch. Only one person would do that. Meow. Meow. She came over to eat. The snow leopard girl actually had a name now. She told me herself, which meant she was smarter than Shumo, who had needed me to give him a name. She wore a simple hide wrap over her chest, along with a short, grass skirt that the children had woven for her as a gift. I'm not eating, she said. Stubborn as always, Chenyu shot her a look. My rabbit girl didn't mind the cat girl, but she definitely didn't trust me and Mian. She caught me staring at the leopard girl's chest more than once. I just smiled and let it go. I figured Mian was just bored. Then, she spoke up, you should leave. The 100 tribes are going to war. I looked up, serious now. What do you know? Tell me. She hesitated, then explained. The shamans of every tribe. They're going to attack the cave bears. I knew that solitary beast shifters like her and Shumo visited their tribal shamans once a year to offer tribute. Both of them had mentioned it. Your shaman told you this. She nodded, then added, run. The lions are coming for you. I laughed coldly. The Lioneer tribe was still holding their grudge, while all the other tribes planned to attack the cave bears. Those bastards wanted to use the chaos to settle their score with us. I wasn't the type to just sit and wait for death. I understood it was time to find a new home, somewhere where my people wouldn't get caught in the crossfire. Deep in the night, I was suddenly jolted awake. Chenyu's eyes snapped open at the exact same moment. There was shouting outside. I grabbed my spear and burst through the door. Shumo came running. The forest is full of wolves. I could already hear howling coming from the pine forest on the mountainside. The cat-ear man hadn't come back to report. Chuamo kept talking, completely out of breath. Cat is trapped. They've got him cornered in a tree. I whistled, and 15 men assembled in moments. A small, nimble shadow followed closely behind us, too. Meow. Meow. Near the tree line, a figure came sprinting toward us. The cat-eared man, bleeding, led the way. Careful, defensive circle. I barked. 6 shield bearers formed an outer ring. The rest stood inside, spears raised. Facing the forest. We had been drilling to formations in our spare time. This defensive circle, and a line. With shields in front and spears behind. It was simple, but it was all we needed. Rustling filled the darkness. Grayish-white wolves emerged. There were at least 20 or 30 of them, and the lead wolf was unmistakable. My blood recognized him. Before my eyes even did. The wolf king. My father. And behind him. Were 2 pairs of eyes I also recognized. My younger brother and sister. The wolves circled us slowly. The wolf king sensed a familiar scent and dropped his beast form, standing as a cold-faced man. Come out. I pushed through the shield wall. Spear in hand. His eyes flickered with a complicated emotion. When he saw my face, you're still alive. I felt nothing for him, no fear, no respect, and no warmth. This is my territory, leave, or die. Every Volf froze. They couldn't believe the reject they'd thrown away. Was not only alive, but leading these outcasts, and speaking in full, fluent sentences while doing so. The Volf King's surprise quickly turned to fury. He bared his teeth and started to shift, ready to slaughter the failures around me, and teach me that even leading a pack of rejects, did in single quotes to give me the right to challenge a real Volf King. But before he could transform, a Volf lunged from behind him. My men raised their spears, ready to throw. But I shouted, "Nobody move." I gripped my spear with both hands, not to stab, but to swing. As my brother leapt at me in his Volf form, I swung the shaft upward like a bat, and cracked it right across his belly. He slammed hard into the ground. Before he could even get up, my foot was pinned to his skull. Little brother, forget your beast form. Even if you could turn into a god, you'd still just be my little brother. It happened so fast, the other wolves barely even processed it. They started snarling, and my father's eyes went wide. I had just put down a transformed Volf, with nothing but a stick. Two more wolves that had crept close suddenly burst forward. Classic Volf tactics. Wait for the target's guard to drop, then ambush from the flanks. Jed didn't even wait for my command. 7 or 8 spears flew through the darkness. Both wolves collapsed before they could even leave the ground, spear shafts jetting from their bodies, howling in pain as blood pooled beneath them. I glanced down at the dying wolves, then locked eyes with my father again. This time, I saw fear. He hadn't expected this. The tribal shamans had given him a mission: capture the lake outcast for a blood sacrifice. Right before the big battle with the cave bears, he had already lost 4 men in the pine forest. And now, 2 more lay bleeding out. Losses like these were rare, even in full-scale territorial wars between tribes. Then, a smaller Volf stepped forward and shifted, revealing a young woman who looked a bit like me. My sister. She put on her most pitiful, helpless face. "Brother, please, let our brother go." I grinned. I remembered her well from this body's childhood memories. Back then, I would catch small animals and always share them with her. She was an expert at playing helpless, at making everyone feel sorry for her. I also remembered the day they ruthlessly drove me out. And now, I had my brother right under my foot. He had shown a flicker of hesitation that day. But my sister, she would watch me leave without a single shred of guilt. I slowly raised my spear, and pointed it right at my brother's head. My father and sister both went deathly pale. But no, I drove the spear deep into the ground, right beside my brother's head, close enough for him to feel the rush of wind. Every Volf let out a breath at once. I lifted my foot off of him. The heavy blow to his belly had forced him out of his beast form. He looked up at me, and our eyes met. I had read him right when they cast me out. He was the only one whose eyes actually held worrying. And just now, he had lunged before our father could even shift. He wasn't aiming for my throat, but was trying to pin me down before things got any worse. "Take them and go," I whispered. "Don't ever come back, brother. Be careful, leave this place," he murmured, clutching his stomach. He staggered to his feet and limped back toward our father. The Volf King stared at me, his face a twisted mess of rage and shame. His cast-off son had just humiliated his entire tribe. He snarled once, then turned and led them away. My sister, that little actress, glanced back with those fake, tearful eyes one last time. Once they were gone, everything became clear. To the beast-shifting tribes, we weren't people. We were just livestock. The shamans wanted us for blood sacrifices, before their massive war against the cave bears. To both sides, we were nothing but meat. I gathered everyone by the lake and told them the harsh truth. The 100 tribes have never seen us as equals. Leaving is our only choice. Every single one of you has been cast aside by your own kind. They despise us, but I promise you this. One day, we will come back, and everything they put us through, we will repay double. He was the first to raise his fist and roar. And then, everyone raised their spears and howled into the night, pouring out years of pain and humiliation. I set fire to the wooden cabins I had built with my own hands. The flames lit up the entire lake, while the others collapsed their caves. We left Mirror Lake that very night, carrying everything we could. The next morning, those tall figures arrived at the crater, only to find nothing but ruins. Their angry roars echoed off the empty walls. After 6 days of crossing the Ancestor Mountains, Chen, you were right. The journey was tough, but manageable for our entire group. On the southern side, we descended into a sea of bamboo and found a river. I knew immediately, this was home. With bamboo to the north, and open plains on the other 3 sides, with a dense jungle still waiting to be explored. Bamboo was 100 times easier to work with than hardwood. My first priority was building bamboo walls. Tomorrow, the real construction would begin. On our 3rd day, I took the hunters out, and stumbled upon a scene in the bamboo forest. A mother panda-eared woman in her beast form, a massive black-hand white bear, was facing down 5 wild jackals. Behind her, a round-faced little boy trembled. The jackals were smart. They didn't fight her directly. They just circled, harassing her and waiting for her transformation to run out. She lunged at 2, but they dodged easily. And while she was overextended, 2 others darted behind her, straight toward the boy. He screamed, and she whirled back to chase them off. This went on until she was gasping for air, her form shrinking as her transformation ended. Without hesitation, she scooped up her son and ran. The jackals howled with excitement and gave chase. 2 of them circled ahead and cut her off. Trapped, she whispered a single word to her boy. Climb. She lifted him onto a bamboo stalk, and he wrapped his little legs around it, pulling himself up. That moment of reaching cost her everything. The jackals hit her from every side. She smashed one with her elbow, but another clamped down on the back of her neck. She fell. The boy clung to the bamboo, crying, "Mother, no." She screamed her last words. "Don't come down." And then, she was gone. The jackals looked up at the boy. They could wait. His arms would give out eventually. The sun finally set, and his grip weakened. One jackal started ramming the bamboo stalk, shaking him loose. He slid lower, inch by inch. The others gathered below, licking their lips. His strength finally failed. He let go, thinking he'd die beside his mother. He hit the ground and closed his eyes. Then there was howling. Not jackal howling, jackal screaming. He opened his eyes. The jackals were scattering in every direction. Strange sounds cut through the air. Bamboo spears flew from every angle. The slow ones became pincushions. Instantly, I stepped out of the shadows and walked to the boy. He stared up at me, dazed. I held out my hand. "Hey, kid. You all right?" He passed out. When he woke up, he was inside a bamboo hut. The smell of something he'd never experienced before. Cooked, seasoned food. Made him swallow involuntarily. He crawled outside and pushed through a hide curtain. People were everywhere, men carrying bamboo poles, a river with stacks of bamboo piled along its banks, and a dozen bamboo shelters just like the one he'd slept in. "Oh, Chen, you spotted him first." She stood before him in a woven bamboo leaf skirt, a fur chest wrap, and a flower crown with white feathers tucked into it. She looked like a forest princess. He backed away, scared. But she smiled gently. "Hey, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you." From nearby, I called out to them, holding a bamboo leaf between my teeth. "Chen Yu, if he's awake. Bring him over here to eat." The boy saw my face, and remembered that I was the one who had saved him. He quietly let Chen Yu take his hand and lead him over. He sat down nervously on the ground, then noticed I was sitting on something unusual, a massive tortoise shell that looked just like a chair. His eyes went wide with curiosity. I chuckled warmly, then stood up and dragged the giant shell over to him. "Sit on this, it's much more comfortable." The little panda boy sat down on the tortoise shell, but flinched the moment he felt the heat coming from the fire pit right in front of him. His survival instinct screamed danger. Generations of bestial memory had taught him that fire meant disaster, and he tried to scramble away. I held him gently and reassured him, "Hey, it's okay. It's all. This is just fire. It's not going to hurt you." Chen Yu pulled a sizzling, roasted chicken wing off the spit, and handed it to the boy. "Here, eat up." The boy's little nose twitched. So that asterisk was where that incredible smell had been coming from. He grabbed the wing and bit right into it, but immediately yelped, baring his teeth. "Too hot." I gently took it back and showed him how to blow on it first. Just then, Joe walked up behind me, wearing woven grass sandals, leather shin guards, and a simple animal hide vest. He really looked like a proper warrior now. "Leader, the traps are all set," he said, then looked around. "Wait, I noticed someone's missing. Where's Chomo?" Jia asked, scratching his head. "He went to find his own kind, apparently." Chomo caught the scent of another beastman, while setting up traps, and he insisted on tracking them down alone. I chuckled. That guy is a lot smarter than he looks. He wouldn't just blindly walk into real danger. It's probably just a female brown bear. Truth is, I chose this bamboo forest for more than just the nearby river. Back on Earth, I grew up in the rugged mountains of Sichuan. With my grandfather. He was the one who raised me, and I spent my childhood helping him weave bamboo baskets and chairs to sell at the market. Bamboo weaving was one skill I didn't need to guess at. I knew it by heart. I organized everyone's roles. Dear Ming would help me plan the wall construction. He was sharp enough to take over once he understood the design. Cat Knight. That was the cattier man's name. Well, just Knight now, because he preferred prowling when everyone else slept. I paired him with two Linkseer tribesmen for a proper night patrol team. I learned during our journey that Cat Knight was actually the little cat girl's half-brother. Same mother, different fathers. The cat girl begged me for a name, so I called her Moon Cat. Moon. She handled daily trap inspections and combat training. Soon, she managed all the women sewing, weaving, and gathering. Near the river, they'd found broad leaves, similar to the ones used to wrap rice, dumplings back home, plus a reed-like plant, with good flexibility. The leaves could become summer skirts, and the reeds might work for sandals. The wall project started the next day. I standardized the height at 4 meters above the ground, with 1 meter buried underground for stability. The bamboo poles here were 8 meters long, and as thick as my arm. Perfect. We dug 4 trenches, each over 100 meters long, just wide enough to set the bamboo poles into. 5 days flew by, and Shuma finally came back, and immediately collapsed into a deep sleep. I didn't bother asking any questions. By then, 2 walls were already standing. He nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw them. He couldn't believe what we'd built while he was off chasing romance. 2 more days, and we'd have all 4 sides done. I wanted to sharpen the tops of the bamboo poles into points, but my stone tools couldn't handle it. I let that slide for now, and told everyone to look out for any interesting rocks. While out foraging, if we could find copper and tin, I could try to make bronze. But iron was completely out of the question. Our little pottery kiln couldn't reach anywhere near those temperatures. After days of rain, the sun finally came out. I laid some bamboo strips on the ground to dry, planning to soak them in rainwater later, dry them again, and then boil them briefly. That process would make them flexible enough for weaving. I also wanted to try making a bamboo bow. It wouldn't be as durable as wood, but it would be much faster to make. Hiwo Kinru fanned her face with both hands, her tongue sticking out. She was sprawled out inside our bamboo shelter, with her bare legs kicked up. She absolutely hated the heat. Want to go for a swim? I asked, fitting a bamboo peg into a hole I had carved into a thicker pole, a joint system I was using to build a bamboo table. I don't like water, she pouted. I smiled. I'd weave her a fan once the bamboo strips were ready. Suddenly, I heard the rapid patter of small feet running toward us. Miao Yue burst in, her usually calm face tight with panic. Leader, Jaeger has been bitten. I dropped everything. Bitten? By what? A snake? I ran over to the shelter where they had carried him. A crowd had already gathered. Lu Ming was kneeling beside the unconscious boy, forcing a purplish red root into his mouth. I pushed my way through. Lu Ming, how is he? Yanger was one of the few mixed-blood children in our tribe. His mother was from the sheep tribe, and his father was from the deer tribe. He had inherited fluffy sheep ears, but had a deer's short tail. Lu Ming was a blood relative, and he looked absolutely devastated. He looked up at me. Leader, the snake grass. It might not be working. He had already given the boy some snake grass, a common anti-venom herb that many tribes kept on hand. We had plenty of herbs from the ancestor mountains. I placed my hand on the boy's chest. His heartbeat was faint, barely there. His face had turned completely black. His entire lower leg was dark and swollen. In my past life, as a veterinarian, I had studied herbal medicine, but most of the plants in this world were different from anything I knew. Even if I could find the right herbs now, it was probably already too late. The tribespeople gathered around, murmuring subtly. Even their clever leader couldn't fix everything. I turned to Cat Moon. Where did it happen? The river, she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. No more playing by the river from now on. Everyone, stay inside the settlement. I went back to examining the wound, desperately trying to think of anything else I could do, when shouting suddenly erupted outside. A man ran up to us, completely breathless. Leader, Cat Knight caught a coward person. A coward person? I was in no mood to deal with strangers. Lamb Boy was dying right in front of me, but Cat Knight had already dragged the captive over. The moment our eyes met, I knew this was no ordinary beast-eared person. He wore a calm, serene smile despite being a prisoner. He had deep wrinkles around his eyes, small horns on his head, a simple cloth wrapped around his waist, and a blue bird symbol painted on his chest. He wasn't naked like most of the beast-eared people I'd met. "Are you the leader?" he asked. His speech was incredibly smooth, smoother than mine, even after my months of practice. "Yes," I replied. "Why were you breaking our traps?" He shook his head gently. "Not breaking, just curious. They're cleverly designed." They almost caught this old man. Just then, a woman screamed from the tent. I dropped everything and ran to Lamb Boy. He was foaming at the mouth, his eyes rolling back. I clenched my fists. I had nothing left to try. The grumpy old man's voice came from behind me, calm and certain. "Green water snake venom. It's late, but it's worth a try." Cat Knight and the others were gripping his legs, trying to hold him back. I looked into the old man's steady eyes, and made my decision. Let him go. He walked over to Lamb Boy, pulled my jade dagger from my belt without asking, and sliced a line across the boy's chest. Black blood poured out, and the tribe gasped. People surged forward in anger, but I blocked them. "Don't move. Let him try. Bring me my pack," he said over his shoulder. Cat Knight grabbed a leather bundle from one of my men and handed it to me. I passed it to the old man. Inside were dried herbs, strange-colored pebbles, and sharp-smelling powders. He gave quick instructions. "Grind this stone. Boil this bitter root. Bring water." I obeyed without hesitation. Then, he sliced his own palm with the dagger, and let his blood drip into Lamb Boy's mouth. Everyone stared in stunned silence. Half a day later, the old man woke from a nap, stepped out of the tent, and examined the bamboo construction. With an approving nod, I rushed over and bowed to him, with my fists pressed together. "Thank you." Lamb Boy was alive. Under modern medicine, that snakebite might still have killed him. Yet, this old man had pulled a child back from death, with nothing but roots, stones, and his own blood. The green water snake's venom acts slowly. "The boy was lucky," he said, waving off my gratitude. "I'm hungry, though. I smell meat. Could an old man get some?" I had Chinyu bring him mushroom soup in a bamboo tube. He sat cross-legged on the ground and sipped it slowly. "Good. You've added salt." Surprising, this deep in the mountains. Chumo waddled over, rubbing his round belly. He'd been sleeping all day and only came out at dusk. "Emo, who's this?" The old man looked at Chumo and blinked. "A beast shifter living with Nong-Hifters. How unusual." Chumo's eyes went wide. "Emo, he's smart." I glared at him. "Sit down. You think everyone's like you. Eat, sleep, and learn nothing." The old man chuckled at Chumo's big, dumb grin. Then, he spoke slowly. "You must be wondering who I am." He told us that south of here, along the banks of something called the Moon River, there were many tribes, real civilizations that had entered the Stone Age. They had settlements, tools, and structure. People like him were called Earth-wise men. They traveled the land, spreading language and survival knowledge. Even the shamans of the northern tribes, beyond the ancestor mountains, had learned from wise men at some point. "That vest is it animal hide?" He pointed at my leather armor. "Curious about us now?" I nodded. "It's tan cow. I stopped mid-sentence, remembering he was descended from cattle. He laughed softly. "It's fine. Wild animals are wild animals. We took different paths. We're not the same species anymore." I was impressed. In this primitive world, meeting someone so open-minded felt like a miracle. No wonder they called him a wise man. "Are you crossing the ancestor mountains?" I asked. "Yes. Walking the other side for a while. Collecting herbs." I felt genuine respect. This old man wandered alone through the dangerous wilderness, just to help people and gather medicine. "Can we help you with anything?" "No, I travel alone. Besides, groups like yours, nobody bothers me." He paused, and I felt a bit embarrassed. Compared to the civilizations he knew, we probably seemed like clueless savages. "Can I know your name?" I asked Sue. He picked up a stick and drew a symbol in the dirt, something like a mountain with 2 dots inside it. "This represents my name. I created it myself." I smiled. His attempt at writing wasn't exactly sophisticated, but it was a start. I wanted to ask about the Moon River settlements, but he shook his head. "I never reveal where tribes are located. That's for you to discover yourself." He paused. "But I will tell you one thing." "What?" He stroked his chin whiskers. "This area is the edge of Pig Ear tribe territory. If you settle here, they won't be happy. They have terrible tempers. I thanked him sincerely for the warning. I offered him my jade dagger for protection, but he declined. I'm a beast shifter. That surprised me. The southern tribes he described used stone tools. Didn't he understand that weapons could be more practical than transformation? He seemed to read my thoughts. Beast shifters who rely on tools lose the totem's blessing. Their ancestral power fades over time. So, even this wise old man had his blind spots. He believed transformation was more valuable than any tool. And honestly, he wasn't wrong about stone tools. They had plenty of limitations. But what comes after stone tools? Bronze, iron, steel. He couldn't imagine those things. I kept my mouth shut. No point arguing about a future that didn't exist yet. Su glanced at Chomo when he mentioned that. Beast shifters lose their power if they rely on tools. Chomo scratched his head. He barely followed our conversation. As long as he ate well and slept well, nothing else seemed to matter to that big oaf. Then, Su straightened up. I see your people have learned how to build shelters. According to our wise men's traditions, once a tribe shows a spark of intelligence... we teach them one survival skill. What do you want? I thought about it carefully. I didn't need hunting advice or building tips. What scared me the most was what had just happened to Lamboy. We need knowledge about healing herbs. Su looked surprised, and maybe a little impressed. Most tribal... leaders would have asked for better ways to find food. He patted me on the shoulder. Green water snake venom can kill an adult in 3 days. But if you act immediately, cut the wound open, find this stone, and a plant called heartleaf grass, and you can save them. He handed me a grayish-white stone, crumbly and light. It reminded me of limestone, but it wasn't quite the same. He agreed to draw the heartleaf grass for me, and asked for some food in return. He would stay for 1 night, and then head up into the Ancestor Mountains. That night, after Chunyu and I had finished our private business, and she was dozing contentedly on the fur mat, Mion's voice came from right outside the tent. It nearly gave me a heart attack. I stepped outside. The little leopard girl was crouched down, right beside the entrance. Ever since we crossed the mountains together, she still preferred to wander alone, only coming back once in a while to sleep. Then, I smelled blood. I knelt down and saw that her forearm was cut. You're hurt. Did you eat your blood grass? And where have you been? 3 questions, all in a row. She looked up at me with those pitiful, amber eyes, but then stubbornly turned her head away, refusing to answer. Classic Mian. I went back inside, grabbed some dried blood grass, and headed to the central fire to boil it. Just then, Su appeared beside me. I was surprised to see him still awake. He let out a loud burp. Your tribe's soup is pretty good, but there just wasn't enough of it. He stood up and went outside to graze on some grass. He said it so casually, as if it were perfectly normal for a wise man to go grazing in the middle of the night. So, are there many others like you? I asked. He shook his head slowly. My green bull clan has scattered to every corner of the world. Most of them got tired of wandering and settled down somewhere. There aren't many of us left walking the earth. I filed that bit of information away. His people were clearly far more intelligent than the average bestier tribes. If I could recruit some of them one day, they would be absolutely invaluable. But I didn't dare bring that up just yet. Offending him would be incredibly foolish. I smiled warmly. Elder, if you ever get tired of traveling, you're always welcome here. I can promise you'll always have plenty to eat. He stroked his beard with a touch of pride. Many tribes have begged me to stay. He sniffed the pot. Thistle grass. Is someone injured? He had referred to our blood grass as thistle grass. Thistle grass... It was so similar to what we called it back on Earth. How interesting. I told him about Mayan's condition. Without any hesitation, he pulled a chunk of something out of his pack. That looked just like a clod of dirt. It gave off a strange, sharp scent. This is called wrought yellow earth. It's extremely rare. Sprinkle it on wounds, and they will heal much faster. My eyes lit up. Thank you. Does it work by killing the infection? Killing the infection, preventing decay. He clearly didn't understand my modern terminology. I mean... It keeps the wound from rotting. He nodded slowly, stroking his beard. Where did you learn to speak like that? An elder in my tribe, I said, faking a sad expression, but he has passed away now. I couldn't afford to reveal too much. We had to keep a low profile and stay quiet until we were strong enough. Su sighed sympathetically. It works exactly like you said, but I can't show you how to brew it. That's a strict Green Bull clan secret. Got it. No hard feelings. I thanked him. Then, I poured the hot medicine into a bamboo container and went off to find Mian. She was waiting quietly right by my tent door. I carefully fed her the medicine. Then, I reached for her hand to treat the cut. She pulled it back instantly. Her amber eyes went wide. I gently rubbed her head. Just putting medicine on. Relax. I gently took her hand again. It felt incredibly soft and squishy, just like a little cat paw. Other cat girls' hands must feel the same. It must be a feline thing. I slowly spread the yellow powder over her raw cut. She bared her sharp teeth and hissed as it stung. Almost finished, I whispered softly. Despite the burning pain, she stood still, trusting me completely. When I finished, she withdrew her hand and spoke in a tiny voice. Those south pigs are bad. Wait, so those pigs down south actually hurt her? That is where she got that nasty wound. The south is their territory, I warned her. Don't hunt there. She vanished into the dark shadows incredibly fast. I missed it. Sue snuck away before dawn without any goodbye. I didn't dwell on it since my schedule was packed. Today's main project, constructing a high-quality kiln to mass-produce solid pottery. Our basic open fire pits had absolute garbage success rates. Step 1 was producing charcoal. You don't just burn wood. Real charcoal needs the oxygen choked out while it burns. I would build a simple mud kiln down by the river. Charcoal burns way hotter than normal timber, which will drastically upgrade our pottery. And if I could find some local limestone, I'd make quicklime to clear out the snakes and nasty bugs crawling around here. I was in the middle of construction when Cat Knight materialized beside me again. Leader, people are coming from the south. What kind? Pig ears. How many? He struggled with the numbers for a moment. Not many. Fewer than us. They probably tracked my scent here. I immediately called every man in the tribe to arms. If these pig people wanted trouble, I had absolutely no problem making them disappear. The men quickly assembled with their weapons: stone spears, sharpened bamboo spears, shields, and axes. I dragged Chuamo out of his nap. We needed the big man's presence to intimidate Mian. Mian appeared from wherever she'd been hiding. It's my fault. I'm going. Stubborn girl. Her wound hadn't even healed yet. I looked at her sternly. If it comes to a fight, you stay back. She blinked her amber eyes. Okay. Footsteps crashed through the jungle south of the river. Cat Knight scouted ahead, perching in a tree, and pointed forward. We slowed down and crept through the undergrowth until we spotted them, 9 pygmy tribesmen, sitting in a small clearing between massive, ancient trees, tearing into raw, bloody rabbit meat with their bare hands. They had absolutely no idea we were there. Everyone waited for my signal. I remembered Sue's warning. Don't make enemies recklessly. So, instead of staging an ambush, I whistled. My men burst out of the bushes and surrounded them in seconds. The pig ears grabbed their weapons, which were mostly bone clubs, except for one fat man who was gripping a stone hammer. Neither side made the first move. I stepped forward. This is our territory. Why are you here? The fat leader squared up to me. He was covered in thick, black body hair, like a fur sweater smeared with mud and tree sap. He was disgusting to look at, but I noticed something interesting. They were wearing actual cloth wraps around their waists. These weren't grass skirts. They were wearing rough linen. They had clearly had contact with the southern civilization. This is our territory, and we've never seen your tribe before. He barked. Well, now you have. I spoke coldly as his beady eyes darted around, sizing us up. Then, he signaled to one of his men, who immediately transformed into a massive black boar. The message was clear. They had beast shifters, and we didn't. He smirked. Just a bunch of mountain trash looking to die. Without another word, the boar charged straight at us, fully confident in its thick hide, which was coated with hardened mud and tree sap, a natural armor that most weapons couldn't penetrate. Throw, I shouted, and 16 spears flew all at once. Most of those pig ears shifted into boar form, but one of them was too slow. 2 spears impaled him before he could even transform. He squealed in agony, but shifted anyway. Wounded, the lead boar barreled straight toward us. At the very last second, I sidestepped, keeping Yiming behind me. Chomo, now in full bear form, slammed both paws down hard on the boar's skull. Its face smashed violently into the dirt. Yiming and I drove our bamboo spears deep into both sides of its belly, even through that thick hide. Our close-range thrusts made it scream out in pain. Watch out, someone yelled. I rolled quickly to the side, as another boar plowed right through where I'd just been standing. Shumo wasn't fast enough to dodge. He took a heavy hit to the body, but he roared and locked into a brutal brawl with the second boar. Spread out, I ordered. But stay close, we've trained for this. Form groups of 3. One shield bearer charged headlong into the boar's rush, bracing hard to absorb the impact. The moment the boar paused to shake off the collision, the other two swung their stone axes right at its head. Our coordination was tight. These boars were incredibly tough, possessing immense strength and stamina. But we kept falling back and striking again and again. As we wore them down, the fight raged on for several minutes. Then, the first boar, the one Chuma had smashed and we had stabbed, collapsed, instantly reverting from its beast form. A snow leopard dropped from the tree branches above, and clamped its jaws around his throat. Mian. She had killed him before he even knew what happened. On my side, every shield was destroyed, but nobody had fallen. We used our numbers and mobility to surround the boars, and hammer them from all sides. I faced down the biggest boar alongside Jia and Yi Ming. My bamboo spear had snapped long ago, and both of my stone spears were gone. All I had left was my jade dagger. The boar locked its eyes on me, charging again and again. I kept dodging, using the speed of my wolf bloodline, looking for an opening. The boar chased me all the way to the edge of the battlefield, glancing at a massive, ancient tree behind me. I got an idea. I deliberately stumbled backward, pretending to slip. The boar saw its chance, and lowered its head for a full-speed charge. Just before impact, I threw my hand up. A figure soared right over my head. Mian. Leaping from above, she grabbed my raised hand midair and flung me sideways, her momentum launching me clear of the charge. I tumbled across the ground. Behind me, there was a thunderous crash as the boar slammed headfirst into the ancient tree trunk. Its body locked up for a few seconds, then toppled over. Jia and Yi Ming were on it instantly, hacking and stabbing at it as it shuddered and reverted from its beast form. Mian offered me her small hand and pulled me up. I grinned at her. Nice work. Perfect timing. You looked beautiful flying through the air like that. One glance between us was all it had taken. She had read my plan in my eyes, sprinted, leapt, shifted out of her leopard form midair, and used her strength and the momentum to yank me out of the boar's path. She turned her head away with a quiet huff. I noticed the wound on her forearm had reopened from the effort. It's over now, I said gently. Stop moving that arm. On the other side of the battlefield, Chuma and his 3-man team had finished off two boars. Chuma was terrifying in combat, nothing like his usual dopey self. He'd ripped both boars apart before they could even drop their beast forms. The 3 men supporting him had backed away, afraid he'd lose control and accidentally crush them. 2. Their strength was horrifying. 2 boys tried to run, but Cat Knight's team chased them down and brought them back alive. I ordered the dead boars' heads cut off and hung from the trees. A warning to anyone who wandered this way. This land has owners now. Half of my men were wounded, but nothing was critical. Their bodies healed fast. I had Cat Knight and 2 others stay behind to erase our tracks. We couldn't let anyone follow us back to the settlement. Not yet. Where did you get this? I held up a strip of rough linen cloth in front of the Tupigir prisoners. They stared at the ground and said nothing. I smiled. I had my ways of making people talk. I nodded at Dear Meng, who gave them a very thorough and persuasive greeting. The ape tribe, it's from the ape tribe. They blurted out. Where are they? Far toward the sunrise. 5 or 6 days walk. Interesting. An ape tribe that could weave cloth. I filed that away. Dear Ming, they're yours now. Put them to work. Feed them twice a day, and don't let them starve. The only loot from the pig ears was a pile of linen scraps. It wasn't impressive, but still useful. I had everything washed and sun-dried. 2 days passed with no sign of the pig tribe returning. Cat Knight found no tracks either. They'd gotten the message. I turned my attention to a new project. A bamboo bow. I sat on the ground, working while Cat Moon crouched silently beside me, watching. She'd been quieter lately, preferring my company, overplaying with the other children. I didn't mind. Go get the cattle tendon for me, I said. She trotted off obediently. It took all morning to split a 2-finger wide bamboo strip with my stone knife, smooth out the bumps where the nodes had been, and wrap the center grip with pig ear linen. I drilled holes at both ends, then braided a bowstring from cattle tendon, twisted together with unraveled linen thread, that I boiled first for strength. I pressed my knee against the middle of the bamboo strip and slowly bent both ends upward, until it curved into a proper bow shape. By sunset, Gia returned with the hunting party. Slim pickings today. Just 1 wild boar, some chickens, and bird eggs. I had them set the dead boar on open ground. For target practice, the results impressed me. At 30 meters, my arrow punched through the boar's hide. If it could do that to a thick-skinned pig, it could certainly kill a person. I was honestly surprised. The bamboo bows I'd made as a kid back in Sichuan had been useless past 10 meters. The difference was the materials. The cattle tendon string snapped with real power, and this world's bamboo was tougher and more flexible. Everyone wanted to try. I let them take turns, coaching each one. Their aim was terrible, most couldn't hit anything. But Cat Knight picked it up like he was born for it. After 2 or 3 shots, he was hitting targets accurately. At 20 meters, I praised him in front of everyone for his earlier scouting work, and handed him the first bamboo bough as a reward. The others watched enviously. Even Cat Knight's usually cold face cracked a small smile. Weeks passed, and deep summer arrived north of the river. Our bamboo settlement had grown into a real, walled village. People came and went through the gate, and women carried bamboo baskets filled with berries. They'd learned to sun-dry half of them for storage, and mash the rest into paste for seasoning meat. Din. You sat with Ket Moon and 2 younger girls, playing a bone-tossing game I had taught them. You'd toss one piece in the air, grab the other bones off the ground, and catch the falling piece before it landed. Din, you won again. Cleaning them out, all 3 kids carefully polished their game pieces. The 2 younger ones pouted, but Cat Moon didn't care about the bones at all. Din, you gave half of them back. Generous, but not all. After all, losing should have consequences. After the little ones left, Cat Moon asked quietly, "Is the leader not back yet, Din? You missed me too, didn't you?" I had been gone for 3 days, searching for a new salt source. At that exact moment, I was sprinting down a mountainside with Chomo and Dear Ming, chased by a swarm of thumb-sized hornets. "Chomo, if you ever steal honey again, I'm cutting your tongue out." We'd successfully tracked a deer herd to a salt lick on a cliff, collected what we needed, and were heading home. Then this idiot bear man spotted a beehive, and just couldn't resist. Now, hundreds of furious hornets were trying to murder us. Chomo ran alongside me, still licking honey off his fingers. Chomo cried, "We won't die, right? You won't die, you've got thick bear hide. But what about me and Dear Ming?" "Water, I smell water," Dear Ming shouted from up front. My Volf nose confirmed it. Sensing moisture in the air, we veered toward it, crashing through a field of jagged boulders, until a deep green pool appeared ahead. All 3 of us dove in without even checking what was inside. We hid underwater, watching the hornets circle above. My lungs burned, but finally, they gave up and flew away. I surfaced first, gasping for air, as Chuomo popped up, laughing. Like a maniac, I cursed at him, but then, I realized something. "Where's Dear Ming?" Our faces completely fell. We both dove back down, searching through the murky water. I spotted a dark shape, swimming closer. My blood ran cold. A giant python had Dear Ming wrapped tightly in its coils. He was already unconscious. With no time to think, I pulled out my jade dagger and drove it deep into the snake's body, dragging the blade downward in one long, brutal cut. Blood immediately clouded the water. Shuomo shifted into his bear form beside me and grabbed the python's head with both claws, trying to rip it apart. The snake hadn't expected its prey to be this aggressive, and it finally released its grip. I grabbed Dear Ming and kicked hard toward the surface, hauling him up onto the bank. His face was turning blue. I placed both hands on his chest and started pressing, humming the beat of a pop song in my head. To keep the tempo steady, push, push, push. In the pool behind me, Shuomo surfaced, and roared in victory over the dead snake. But when he saw the look on my face, he immediately went quiet, hanging his head like a scolded child. Minutes passed, and my arms ached. But then Dear Ming coughed weakly. My heart leapt. Dear Ming. But he went still again, showing no more response. Desperate, I kept pressing, feeling all hope drain away. Then, from behind a tall rock nearby, a clear voice rang out, "Hey." I spun around, my heart pounding wildly. Standing behind the rocks were 3 deer-eared girls, holding bamboo spears, dressed in deerskin clothes and wearing white feather crowns. A herd of spotted deer stood calmly beside them. "Chomo," I called out. He was still dragging the giant python. He hauled it onto the bank, dropped it instantly, and ran over. When she saw us, the lead girl raised her hands. "I can help your friend," but I didn't lower my guard. "Is this your territory?" She nodded gently, glancing at the half-destroyed python, with fear in her eyes. She slowly approached with her 2 companions. Up close, she was absolutely stunning. She had pale skin, which was rare in this era. Rosy lips and pearly white teeth. She was about my height, with a leather strap wrapped around one thigh, and grass sandals on her feet. She looked down at dear Ming on the ground, and seemed surprised. The man I was trying to save was actually from her own dear clan. I am a shaman. I can save him, she said. Since I had no other options left, I bowed deeply, pressing my fists together, and stepped back with Chomo. I'm sorry, Chomo whispered beside me. His greed for honey had nearly killed our fellow tribesman. For once, the big idiot was genuinely feeling remorse. I watched the three girls work. Two of them began dancing gracefully with their staffs, while the young shaman pulled out a bamboo tube, filled with a thick black paste. She spread the paste on dear Ming's chest, cut her own palm, dripped her blood into the tube, and then added crushed, dried flower petals. The two dancers spat into the tube. She stirred everything together, and poured it into dear Ming's mouth. All three then knelt and prayed with clenched fists. Chomo and I sat waiting as the sun crept lower, through the stone forest. Then, dear Ming coughed violently. We rushed over as his eyes fluttered open. He saw my face, and his lips moved slightly. It's okay, I told him. The python is dead. Chomo killed it. He blinked once, then passed out again. But he was alive. I turned to look at the three girls. Thank you for saving my people. The young shaman smiled softly. You killed the python. You helped us too. She explained that this pool ... was her tribe's only reliable water source. But that giant snake had been attacking ... anyone who came to get a drink. Without even meaning to, we'd solved their assignment of a problem. It's getting dark. Come rest with my tribe, she offered. I hesitated, then agreed. She seemed kind. The deer tribe was larger than I expected. At least 100 people, and mostly women. It was a true matriarchal society. What amazed me most was that they rode deer. Spotted deer lived right alongside them, and many of the women got around on deer back. They lived to the west of the boulder field, using natural rock overhangs as half caves, and adding walls of bamboo and branches to create shelter. When Chomo and I dragged in the python's carcass, everyone gathered around to stare. Children hid behind their mothers. The snake was 7 or 8 meters long, and thicker than my thigh, easily big enough to swallow a person whole. The shaman cleared the crowd away, and Chomo and I began skinning the snake. Snake skin is a valuable material, after all. The deer people backed far away from the smell of blood, but the shaman stayed close, fascinated by my jade dagger. I thought about making a fire, but then I noticed they didn't have one. Maybe the deer people hated fire. It destroys forests and plants, after all. So, I kept my fire-making skills to myself. There was no point in offending my hosts. Instead, I offered them the snake meat. The shaman accepted it happily. It turned out they did eat meat occasionally, especially the tribe members who couldn't transform. They really needed the protein. That night, under a sky full of stars, Chomo was finally asleep while I sat on a boulder, chatting with the young shaman. Have you met Sue? I asked, trying to make conversation. Her eyes brightened. Yes, he passed through here recently. She studied my face. You can't transform ... right? Then ... how does the bear obey you? I tapped my forehead. With this. She laughed, then grew serious. That ... pressing thing you did ... it was incredible. Without it ... we couldn't have saved him. CPR, I said quietly. Artificial breathing. Her eyes sparkled like the stars above. Is it a tribal secret? Something like that. She looked away, disappointed. She wanted to learn, but she was too honorable to ask for another tribe's sacred knowledge. I read her perfectly. I can teach you. She shook her head quickly. No. Tribal knowledge is precious. I can't just take it. I liked her even more. She was honest to a fault. My tribe is gone. I lied gently. Let me teach you. It shouldn't die with me. She hesitated. Then ... I'll give you something in return. Deal. Our eyes met. My heart beat faster than it should have. With Chinyu, things had happened naturally. Two lonely souls finding comfort. But this was different. This girl made my chest tight just by looking at me. You should lie down, I said, clearing my throat. She lay back without suspicion, her eyes full of eager curiosity. I placed my hand on her chest, slightly left of center ... Press here. Push down firmly. The softness under my palm was distracting. I saw her pure, trusting eyes looking up at me and coughed, trying to pull myself together. Now ... You need to sing a steady rhythm. 1 press per beat. What's a rhythm? I explained patiently. and then began quietly singing the tune I'd used, a catchy pop song from my old life. She tried to follow along, and we took turns practicing on each other, switching positions, pressing, and singing. Late into the night, the Deer tribe watched from their shelters. With wide eyes, their shaman and this Volf stranger were climbing on top of each other, chanting mysterious words, and doing something none of them understood. They assumed it was some sacred ritual between our tribes. The next morning, Chomo carried Deer Ming on his back. As we said goodbye, the Deer women were incredibly generous. They told me I could come back anytime for salt, and escorted us all the way through the boulder field. Back at the bamboo settlement, I got Deer Ming settled with some caretakers, then immediately started boiling salt with Chunyu. Our supply was almost gone, and salt had become essential, distributed based on how much work each person did. The tribe was still running on shared resources, but I'd had a bamboo storehouse built, guarded by 2 people, and filled with everything we'd collected. Outside my bamboo house, Cat Moon and the little panda boy were crouching on the ground, counting bamboo sticks for the math lessons I'd started. When Cat Moon saw me, she abandoned the panda kid and ran over, proudly holding up a grayish-white stone. She knew I'd been trying to fire limestone. Her brother, Cat Knight, had found this rock and given it to her. I examined it carefully. It was too hard to be limestone, and it had a faint metallic sheen. My pulse quickened. This might be tin ore. I couldn't be sure without firing it, but the texture was highly promising. I gently patted her head. She nodded earnestly. I had other work to do tomorrow. I was building a drum using python skin. It had great flexibility, and since cowhide was too precious, snake skin would have to do for now. Before I could go inside, Song walked up. He was a cold, quiet Volf beastman, and probably our best fighter after Jia. He held up a bamboo bow he had built himself. I tested the draw. Not bad. Not bad at all. You made this yourself. He gave a silent nod. I clapped his shoulder. Good work. The bowstring attachment needs fixing, though. Take it apart, and I'll show you the right way to do it. The ghost of a smile crossed his stoic face. Praise from the leader meant everything to him, even if a proud Volf would never show it the way a cat or a rabbit would. I taught Song arrow making late into the night. The fletching keeps the arrow stable in flight. You don't need to understand why. Just never skip the feathers. He nodded solemnly. Then, he noticed a pair of glowing red eyes at the doorway. It was Chenyu, radiating displeasure. Even the fearless Song was scared of my rabbit wife. Her authority over the tribe's women had grown, until practically everyone obeyed her. I'm leaving. He grabbed his bow and fled. Chenyu's expression shifted, looking dissatisfied. I turned around with a weak smile. She'd been muttering about one thing constantly lately. Why couldn't she get pregnant? When other mixed species couples in the tribe were having children, she didn't know I was deliberately preventing it. The world wasn't safe enough yet. But try explaining birth control to a rabbit girl. I finished making the drum frame from woven bamboo and stretched snakeskin over both sides. It sounded decent when I tapped it. Good craftsmanship never fades. At noon, I had just bitten into some roast meat when someone shouted for me. I ran over with Cat Moon. Everyone was gathered around the fire pit, pointing at a silvery, white liquid pooling at the bottom. I put out the fire and waited for it to cool. The liquid had hardened into odd-shaped lumps of silver. I picked up a piece of white metal and bent it easily. It deformed perfectly without cracking. The tribe looked deeply disappointed. Softer than pottery, useless. They thought I was just ecstatic. This texture, this color, its incredible malleability, it was tin. Real tin metal is absolute treasure. I held up the warped metal and laughed out loud. With nobody understanding, I sent Cat Moon to find her brother, so he could show me where he found the ore. Hours passed, but get this, he didn't return. A cold feeling hit my gut. Something felt wrong. I grabbed Mian and Chu. We took Mo, 4 men, and rushed into the southern jungle. Normally, Cat Moon could just call from the forest edge, and Cat Knight would answer from deep inside. This time, only silence. He was either not there, or in serious trouble. We pushed inside, all the traps were untouched. Past the massive ancient trees, a Linkseer scout dropped from a branch leader. Where is Cat Knight? He went after the Apirs. Wait, the Apirs are here. My heart jumped. I wondered if they looked like actual humans, like from my old world, but now wasn't the time. How long ago? About half a day. Stay on guard, Mian. We're going after him. Mian leapt first, tracking him, I sent, leaving clear marks for us to follow. Fast and incredibly precise. We finally found Cat Knight on open ground. East of the jungle, he was standing face to face with two Apier men. They carried leather packs and wore linen wraps. Their ears were small, but their noses were large and slightly upturned. Not quite human-looking, but extremely close. Cat Knight had them pinned down with his bow. One had a fresh arrow graze on his shoulder. They were panting, hands raised high. "Why are you chasing us?" Cat Knight asked coldly. "Because you entered our territory." The two Apier men exchanged nervous glances. "Your wild beast ears." Cat Knight said nothing. They seemed to understand. I flashed a friendly smile. "We are Apier people. We trade. You know what trading is." One of those Apier men slowly stepped closer and pointed directly at Cat Knight's bow. Asking what it was, Cat Knight stayed quiet. "I told everyone our tools stay secret." The Apier man scratched his cheek. Then he pulled some brown linen from his pack, holding it up to trade for some food. Cat Knight understood, but he hesitated, knowing I valued this cloth. Still, he couldn't trade that bow. He did have some wild chickens, though, hidden inside his forest hut. But then, Mian dashed in as a snow leopard, shifting right back beside Cat Knight. She quickly scanned the situation, warning about leaders, and then went silent. I arrived moments later, seeing this Apier man. It gave me this surprisingly warm feeling, you know? Their ears looked almost exactly like human ears, from my old world, with only their long tails giving them away. Once I realized they were just traders, not invaders, I relaxed. "You want trade? I really need that linen." They were completely shocked that a wild beast, or any local, could speak this fluently. One immediately held up his brown cloth. "One cheap, too expensive." I shook my head. The linen was nice, but not essential. Besides, Shinyu's women were already searching for plants to weave fabric from. "Just one chicken," I countered. They quickly huddled together, whispering. A piece of linen was only worth one chicken anyway. Even by their standards, their women could weave it quite quickly. They agreed without any haggling. While we waited for someone to go fetch those chickens, I asked them what else they had. They eagerly spread out their leather packs. Inside were all sorts of goods, including tiny clay pots, much better quality and cleaner firing than ours. I picked up a sealed pot. "What is inside?" "Glue." The trader said so, but I wanted it open. But he would not let me. Not until we made a deal and agreed on a trade. "Fair enough, what do you want for it?" "Horns," he mimed. "Antlers or cattle horns?" Luckily, I had plenty of cattle horns stored away. I was planning to hollow some out for signals, but I could spare one or two. Deal. I ended up trading 6 chickens for all their linen, plus 1 cattle horn for that pot of glue. Before leaving, they dropped this major bomb. Once the leaves turn yellow and autumn arrives, there would be a massive multi-tribe trade gathering, held in a deep canyon 7 days to the east. It lasts for a while, and any tribe can attend. My mind instantly raced. A trading fair. If I could produce some 10 goods by then, shiny, beautiful metal containers that nobody else possessed, I could trade for items that usually take months to make, or find on my own. I thanked them sincerely. Once they disappeared, I turned to Cat Knight with a pretty stern look. "Next time, report first before chasing after anyone." Nodding, he accepted the criticism, believing he could handle 2 people alone. He was actually right about that. But running off like that, seriously risky, reckless and highly dangerous. That evening, I tested the snakeskin drum. The sound, thinner than I hoped, definitely no good for a war drum, but the tribe absolutely loved it. Everyone gathered around as I played, waving their arms and swaying to the beat. Mian poked her head out of her tiny bamboo hut, watched for 2 seconds, then ducked right back inside. Meanwhile, Chuamo slept through the whole thing like a dead pig. Shinyu claimed the drum almost immediately. Anything I made was a total treasure in her eyes. I asked Cat Knight about the tenor. He claimed he found that stone just south of the jungle, about a half-day trek, tucked in a gully between 2 low hills. But that was piggy territory. 3 different pig clans held the land south of us, all loosely connected by blood. The group we clashed with was the smallest, roughly our size. Since their chief was dead and their fighters wiped out, most survivors probably joined those other clans. Luckily, neither of those bigger clans came looking for payback. A relief, and our 2 prisoners confirmed it. Looking miserable, they told us their leader was dead. Their surviving people had definitely fled to the other clans. I absolutely needed that tenor, and I needed it fast, before the autumn trade fair. "Tomorrow, I'm taking a team south." Just then, Shinyu and the women returned from the river, lugging fish traps made of bamboo. My own design. The catch was amazing. Just as good as nets, And the women kept praising my genius. Shinyu walked right beside me, beaming with pride, her arm wrapped tight around mine. Suddenly, her face fell. Look there, the dear shaman actually found us. She brought 6 followers and a gift. Pure salt rocks. Ever since I taught her CPR, she had been incredibly eager to keep talking, desperate to learn from someone she considered wise. And now, she was back, hoping I would show her how to refine that pure white salt. She saw us use it, and she wasn't empty-handed. She brought 2 domesticated spotted deer, fully tame, obedient, and both pregnant with fawns. Perfect animals I wouldn't have to waste months taming. Naturally, I accepted. But that salt refining, that method was way too valuable to just give away. I promised to prepare a batch for her to take. Just bring me the raw stones. I will give back refined salt. She smiled and nodded, completely unsurprised. She honestly hadn't expected us to give up our secrets. Her companions were absolutely mesmerized by our bamboo walls and our houses built on the ground. They kept twisting their heads to peek inside every structure. I invited them all to stay for a feast. We lit a massive bonfire, and I brought out our snakeskin drum. Then the dear shaman pulled out her bone flute, and she began playing a real melody, with real, actual rhythm, leaving me pretty embarrassed, just banging my drum randomly, with zero musical sense, but absolutely nobody cared. Everyone danced together, with men locking arms and stomping. They threw their heads back, howling in unison. No elegance, pure primal celebration. Honestly, this is perfect. The more everyone mingled, the better. This growing tribe desperately needed babies. The wild party lasted deep into the night. Once things finally quieted down, I sat with Chunyu on my left, and the dear shaman sat on my right. She quietly shared amazing stories of her own people. Then she held up her bone flute. A traveling wise man gave this to my mother long ago. Never saw him again. So your mother fell in love with that wise man? I asked without thinking. The dear shaman tilted her beautiful face, confused. Love. Chunyu hugged my arm quite possessively. Love is just when two people make babies together. The shaman covered her mouth and giggled. If that's not love, then what is it between a mother and daughter? That is family love, I replied softly. But between a man and woman who want to care for each other, that is romantic love. Your mother and that wise man, probably just friendship. She pressed her palms together, eyes shining with admiration. Yes, friendship. Did you think of these wise words yourself, Emma? More or less, I shamelessly took the credit. But she planted an incredibly important seed in my mind. Building a tribe was not just about food and tools. People needed ideas of right and wrong. They needed kindness, loyalty, and rules to live by. That is what separates humans from animals. I had to start teaching them morals, plus basic survival skills. Eventually, she turned to Chinyu. You two, neither of you can transform. Chinyu just sniffed. What's so great about transforming anyway? I quickly changed the subject. Before my rabbit wife picked a fight, I wanted to know, how does your tribe keep their teeth so clean, so pearly white? No, Rod, she smiled shyly. We chew on a certain grass root. It keeps our teeth healthy. Yes. Could you bring some next time to trade with us? She agreed. So I asked about the autumn fair. She explained everything. It was run by the wise men and shamans from 3 major tribes. It took place in a canyon every year, 7 days to the east, but here is the shocking part. And get this, they weren't trading goods. It was actual people. They exchanged members to prevent inbreeding. Most preferred trading within their own species, since mixed species kids usually couldn't even transform, and ended up as slaves. I memorized every detail. We agreed to head to the fair together. The next morning, our hunters returned early from the bamboo mountains, with an amazing catch. Bamboo traps were simple to craft and set in bulk. Our success rate just kept climbing. The dear shaman woke in the guest bamboo hut, breathing in the fresh scent of bamboo. She slept incredibly well on a bamboo bed, layered with warm sheepskins, the best lodging our tribe could offer. Looking out the window, she saw me sitting on the ground with the kids, teaching them to count from 1 to 10. Eager kids raised their hands, competing to answer. Meanwhile, the women headed out, laughing with bamboo fish traps on their backs. She wanted to ask about our bamboo weaving, but she had already requested too much this visit, so she decided to go back home to collect those tooth-cleaning roots and trade them for some bamboo goods later. I wrapped up class pretty early today, leaving Cat Moon to run things. While I went to check our first kill, we carefully stacked clay pots inside the new setup. packed with charcoal below, then sealed the top shut, leaving just a tiny gap for the fire. Soon, the deer shaman came to say goodbye. Behind her, one of her girls looked pretty sheepish, a night in Deer Ming's hut. And honestly, both of us quietly approved. Even a single encounter could produce a child, which would benefit both tribes. Since they were leaving, I gave her refined salt, along with a basic filter made of ash, linen and bamboo. Now her people could easily refine it themselves. I cannot leave my tribe for too long, she said softly. Let me escort you. No, you are busy. We know these lands pretty well. Song, take some hunters to guard them partway. Yes, leader. But hours passed and Song was still missing. My gut twisted as I grabbed Mian, Jia and some men, and ran. Suddenly, Mian burst out of the brush ahead, his face pale, smelling tiger scent. My blood froze. A tiger beast, regular or wild, it did not matter. Every tribe here feared those massive tigers. Deep to their bones, somewhere right ahead, Song was sprinting through the thick bamboo, with the shaman and one of her girls. Terrifying tiger roars echoed right behind. Song's bow was completely shattered. He pulled it too hard in panic and snapped it. Yet he still gripped the broken string tight, refusing to drop it over the peak. The other side leads straight home. Song gasped out more words right now than he had probably spoken his entire life. The shaman is fading. Her stamina simply cannot match a wolf. Blood warriors, her companion screams. Shaman, transform and run. Then she looks at Song. She cannot bear to leave him behind. Song gets it instantly. Run. I have a plan. She grits her teeth. Her tribe is still waiting for her. Both deer women shift, leaping uphill on four legs. Song halts in his tracks, turning around. A massive white tiger bursts from the bamboo. Over 3 meters long. Predatory amusement shines in those cold eyes. Song takes one breath. He yanks the heavy spear off his back and raises it high overhead. The predator flinches sideways. It had already tasted spearheads earlier today and remembers that agony. Shallow wounds on its side prove the point. But Song does not throw. He pivots and bolts. Not backward, but cutting down the steep slope. Now watch, the tricked beast lets out a furious roar. Going downhill gives him some speed. But nobody can outrun a tiger's raw burst. Within seconds, he feels hot breath right on his neck. He dives flat, rolling hard across the dirt. The massive beast sails over, crashing down right where he was standing. Claws slash empty air, but this beast won't miss twice. You can see it locking on, coiling to launch again. Song knows he is done for. He stops running, falls straight back, and slams the spear's heavy wooden butt into the dirt, with the iron tip angled high. One insane gamble. But he completely underestimated this jungle king. The predator does not dive onto the blade. It stops on a dime. Only a massive cat can control its weight like that. Song's blood runs cold. The monster is far smarter than he thought. Before he can even stand, the beast drops and strikes. One heavy swipe snaps his spear like dry twigs. He stumbles backward, frantically trying to escape. Suddenly, a sharp leopard shriek sliced through the air. The tiger flinched, pulled back, desperately scanning for a new threat. A tiny snow leopard stood right there. Mian Mian. The tiger glared with absolute contempt. This tiny creature dared challenge it. It roared. The whole mountainside trembled. But before that echo even faded, spears came flying out of the bamboo. The tiger leapt backward, dodging easily. We burst right out of the trees, 7 of us, myself included. Look at this monster. My stomach completely dropped. This beast was bigger than any Siberian tiger I had seen in documentaries. My warrior pulled Song to his feet. I asked about the deer people. They escaped, I breathed with relief. Then all 7 of us began shouting, waving our spears and making a massive racket. The tiger watched us but kept its distance. A massive predator like this, especially a cat, would never risk injury for one quick meal. Out in the wild, getting hurt means death. And it already had a deer from its ambush on the deer ear group, so it turned and vanished to claim that prize instead. I let out a heavy breath. Let's be real. We could never beat that head on. Soon, we found the deer ear group nearby. They lost to spotted deer, and one woman was hurt. Thankfully, she was fine, and their shaman thanked us. I insisted on escorting them right to the very edge of their border. Once we got back home, Chuimo heard about the white tiger and perked up. All his usual laziness was gone. He wanted to hunt it together. Absolutely right. We absolutely could not let that monster roam near us. But first, I needed to gather tin ore from the south. That tiger would stay away from our village, at least for a while. We would plan a proper hunt later. For now, I warned everyone to stay completely out of the deep bamboo forest. The very next day, I headed south with Mian, Je, and 3 others, right past the southern jungle. I officially named it South Forest, for simple communication. Then, the landscape opened into wide grassland. Ancient forests were shrinking fast, giving way to these endless plains. Creatures that couldn't adapt would go extinct. Only adapters survived, just like early apes did, when they left the trees to walk upright. We moved pretty fast across the open ground, passing massive animal herds. We even hunted to deer on our way, while resting under a truly massive ancient tree. Mian wasted absolutely. She scrambled up and found several bird nests. The guys happily boiled the eggs. She crouched beside me, staring into the pot, asking about her past. Was your old territory north of here, Mian? The ancestor mountains, specifically. She froze, then silently shook her head. Clearly bad memories she never wanted to share. You can basically feel her pain here, can't you? She just shut down. I handed her a boiled egg almost the size of my fist. She peeled it pretty expertly. She was totally used to cooked food by now. Suddenly, giant birds screamed overhead, furious about their stolen eggs. The guys actually got pretty excited, hoping one would swoop down low, so they could test their spear accuracy. The birds just circled and screeched, never brave enough to actually attack. By midday, we reached a gully between 2 low hills, the exact spot where Cat Knight found tin rocks. I sent the guys down to gather them. Mian and I kept close watch from the hilltop. I was busy hollowing out a dried deer bone, trying to fashion a crude bone flute. My old grandfather used to carve bamboo flutes back home. That memory used to be pretty blurry, but my post-crossing perfect recall now lets me replay every tiny detail. Where to drill the holes, how far apart, even the exact angle of every cut. Mian, dozing right beside me, she suddenly raised her head. Blood. I sniffed the air. My Wolf nose caught it too, thick and fresh. It was close. I told Gia to keep gathering while Mian and I went to investigate. Just a quick look. The 2 of us could slip away pretty easily. If needed, we headed south, over the hill, right near the bottom. Mian shifted into her leopard form to scout ahead. The bottom of the slope was thick with bushes, heavy with sour, unripe green fruit. We crouched low, sliding through the branches, until she froze. I knelt beside her, peering through the thick leaves. What I saw next genuinely made my stomach twist. A massive horde of pig-ear tribesmen surrounded a tall, wooden platform. Up there, a pig-ear shaman wore a bone mask, with a long leg bone tied to his head, his arms spread wide, shaking his heavy, fat body in some wild trance. Severed heads littered his feet, dozens of them, mostly rabbit tribe. Mixed in with those heads were bloody organs, laid out across the platform like a red carpet. Below him, tribesmen held animal skulls above their heads, circling the bloody platform in perfect rhythm, swinging their shoulders in unison. This was a brutal, primitive sacrifice, the very first I'd witnessed in person. Honestly, just think about what could have happened if we had stayed north of the mountains, my own people, and I would be lying dead on that platform. Let's go, I whispered. Mian had clearly seen this kind of horror before, showing absolutely zero interest in watching. As we turned to leave, war cries erupted from the east. A savage herd of black boars, tusked and giant, came crashing through. The pig-ear tribe exploded with fury. Their warriors shifted to beast form. Charging forward, their massive bodies collided. Boars fell on both sides, and shifted pig-ear slaves desperately hurled stones. Suddenly, more figures poured from the east. Not pigs, but Valfir warriors carrying heavy clubs. Their ears were pretty different from mine. Smaller, brownish mountain wolves. A distinct subspecies. I was Plains Greystock. In beast form, I would easily dwarf them. This was a brutal tribal war. We had a front row seat, 2 pig clans and a wolf pack shredding each other. Right over the sacrificial grounds, those mountain wolves shifted into brown beasts, and threw themselves into the chaos. Tide completely turned. The pig-ear shaman on the platform saw them losing, and ordered his last reserves to charge. Then, the fat coward transformed into a black boar, and bolted straight, right toward our hiding spot in the bushes. No way, is he actually running? But I had no time to complain. Mian, let's go. I turned and sprinted back the way we came. The crashing behind us grew louder. That pig was surprisingly fast with his life on the line. We burst from the bushes and dove sideways. The massive black boar shot past us, and slammed headfirst into a solid boulder. He dropped beast form, clutching his bruised head, moaning on the dirt. Mian, Me and I exchanged a quick glance. Then we pounced. I slammed my foot on his fat stomach. He stared up at us, pure terror in his tiny eyes. "Don't kill me," he squealed. Mian slammed her grass sandal right onto his pig face. "Shut up, then," rustling in the bushes. Someone was trailing us. I yanked the shaman by his floppy ear. "Wanna live? Then move." We dragged him right over the hill. I ordered GS team to grab their baskets and run. No time to explain this fat stranger. Back at the bamboo settlement, the kids immediately swarmed our new prisoner, poking and teasing him. Our pig-eared captives from before stared in absolute disbelief. "Look at that, another pig clan shaman captured." We slammed him down hard. He was surprisingly younger than I expected, and he immediately wore this pretty pathetic, groveling smile. I pulled up a bamboo stool, sitting close. "I know you. Was not the mountain bamboo clan chief killed? You killed him and his tribe fled to mine." He gave a highly nervous laugh. "So why did you never come after us?" He puffed himself up with fake outrage. "They were my enemies," he claimed. I narrowed my eyes. This guy was clever, and his smile was oily. Every word calculated. Back on Earth, old-timers used to say, pigs are way smarter than people give them credit for. This guy confirmed it. I did not lower my guard for even a second. "Let's talk about you. Want to live?" He nodded frantically. "What can you offer my tribe?" I demanded, and his eyes lit up. He reached inside the linen band around his waist, pulling out a few tiny grains. "Bury these in the dirt. By autumn, they grow huge and taste absolutely amazing." I froze. Wait, is this actually agriculture? I took the grains and sniffed them. A faint, rice-like fragrance remained, but these kernels were far too small for rice. Not millet either, something entirely different. Maybe some wild ancestor of actual rice. "You discovered this?" I demanded. My voice went pretty cold as he rubbed his nose. Beady eyes shifted nervously. "My people found them during a drought in a dried-up swamp, eating grass." "I know a wise man," I said flatly. That rattled him. His face went completely pale. He figured I was just some wild beast roaming around here, but he only just realized how easily I was speaking. He winced. "Fair enough. We discovered the grain, but our elders said we could actually grow things in the dirt. We planted a lot of seeds this season, but right before the autumn harvest." He stopped talking. His people were just gone. "Your land has swamps, with plenty of southern water," he added, desperately trying to show he was actually useful. "If this grain really was an ancestor of rice, and if I managed to breed them right, that would change everything for us." Foraging and catching fish had clear limits. Real agriculture was the ultimate key. "For now, you will work alongside the rest and earn your food," I told him, turning on my heel. He sat there shivering, absolutely terrified he would be sacrificed. The guy was overthinking his actual job was just digging, with the other two pig captives, finishing up our last wall section. The group that lost their priest never came looking for him. Those three southern pig factions had completely united. After the conflict, they did not care about some missing runaway. Meanwhile, I turned to working metal. I made clay templates and broke tin ore into tiny pieces, stuffing them into the kiln with charcoal. Then, I let the intense heat work. Glowing liquid silver poured out through a channel directly into the templates. Once cooled down, I had solid tin bowls, gleaming bright. They looked gorgeous, though not entirely pure. You could spot minor flaws in the surface, but to locals who only used clay or rocks, they were magic. The upgraded charcoal kiln also boosted our clay vessels. Higher heat made them stronger, and trust me, they felt incredibly different. I learned from the captive priest that every clan possessed a fitting name to build real unity among my rather mixed species group. I called us the Vessel Tribe, since chi translates to tools and containers in our tongue. I completely avoided any species name. Since we weren't one single species, we were all of them. And summer dragged on. Mosquitoes absolutely swarmed the bamboo forest, yet everyone endured it, and kept building whatever I designed. Then one morning, as summer was finally fading away, a woman rushed out of our large bamboo co-op we built, holding something high above her head. "Look at that," they laid an egg. We now had over 20 wild chickens of 2 varieties, all with clipped wings inside that spacious enclosure. They'd gotten quite used to being fed, and had calmed down pretty significantly. One gray, long-tailed breed grew fat fast, and today, finally, came the first egg, and she ran to find me. But I wasn't home. Instead, Cat Moon was happily swinging on a bamboo swing set, built behind my house. It had 2 thick posts and a bamboo crossbeam, tough bark rope, sturdy chains, and a bamboo slat seat. I had built it for her and Kunyu. On a quiet afternoon, it definitely couldn't hold someone like Chu and Mo without instantly snapping. But for the young girls, it was perfect. Where is the leader? Visiting the deer people. One of the little children answered. Regardless, the woman spread the news anyway, and the whole village was absolutely buzzing. Everyone suddenly realized why I had been raising those wild birds. More chicken simply meant fresh eggs daily. Such simplistic thinking, I quietly murmured, standing in the boulder field with the deer shaman. That was my honest assessment of most beast deer people. Kind hearts, but only seeing one step ahead. The old deer shaman looked exactly the same as before, aside from a simple jade pendant, tied with a woven cord around her wrist. Even her hair was cut quite a bit shorter. Using jade to cut hair, I asked, making her tilt her head. Why not? It gets pretty sharp when you polish it. I just smiled. In this era, jade was really just a practical stone. Her tribe only valued it for decoration and work. No magic fortunes, imagine that for a second. Just a pretty rock with an edge. So where on earth did your people find so much jade? I asked, genuinely curious. Our shaman friend just smiled, but completely ignored my question about the source. She clearly had her reasons. Likely some secret she could not share. Not greed. We sat together on the tallest boulder in the entire stone field. Down below, her people were busy hauling bamboo and timber. She really wanted to copy our building style. To improve living conditions for her tribe, I did not offer to help. They were easily smart enough to figure things out. Building simple huts was easy anyway. Besides, most of her tribe kept their distance from us. We needed a solid alliance before they would truly trust us. I definitely was not about to beg. What about the tiger? She suddenly asked. I sighed. We searched 3 whole times. Still no tracks. Maybe it was just passing through. Yet, that dangerous threat hung over every single hunt. Everyone went out terrified. So, I quickly changed the subject by pulling out the shiny tin bowls I brought. And let me tell you, her eyes went incredibly wide. This bright silver-white metal was smooth and beautiful. She had only ever traded for basic clay pottery before, but this metal made rough clay look like dirt. What do you want for them? She asked, barely hiding her wild excitement. Deer hides, and lots of them. She did not mind. Her tribe had long since moved past petty greed. The beast world, tribes and wild beasts were completely different things. Survival demanded pretty brutal choices. Even eating your own kind was possible. During extreme survival situations, anyway. We have plenty of hides in our ancestral stores. She asked calmly, making me cough. The pig-eared shaman. Our captive once told me every tribe kept them. Massive, hidden stockpiles of their own species. Signature materials like tusks for pig tribes, antlers and hides for the deer tribes. If that's too much to ask, I'll happily trade for some teeth-cleaning grass instead. She shook her head with a gentle smile. Those hides were actually going to the autumn fair, so she could easily spare some now. 7 tin bowls for 7 deer hides, plus 2 sets of antlers and a leather bag of chewing grass. A solid trade. I snapped off a piece of the dried grass and chewed it. My mouth instantly flooded with pretty foamy spit. Some chemical compound in the plant, mixed with spit to act like a natural toothpaste. After rinsing with fresh water from a bamboo tube, then she dropped a warning that honestly should make us all worrying. Never bring any tin to the trade fair. I looked down, figuring someone would try to take it. She just shook her head. Not at the market itself, since rules exist there, but afterward. Powerful tribes would hunt you and your people down. She didn't finish, but I understood. My tribe was mostly made of non-shifters, and in the eyes of this beast world, we were weak. Everyone knows this. Shiny metal would paint a target on us. The bias against non-shifters was a massive mountain. It wouldn't budge, and her warning completely sobered me up. I couldn't underestimate anyone in this savage world. Their smarts, or their absolute cruelty. The tallest tree always catches the wind. I thanked her sincerely, inviting her tribe to pay us a visit, to celebrate our wall completion ceremony. The giant bamboo wall was finally finished. Our settlement was finally fully enclosed for the very first time. But back home, I felt uneasy. The pig tribes to the south already knew we existed. Clash was inevitable. A bamboo wall could stop wild beasts, but not an organized army. So I started planning a trench outside the walls, lined with razor-sharp bamboo stakes. Our captive pig shaman estimated that those grain seeds, his people planted back in late spring, should be fully ripe by now. Some wild rice or whatever ancestor crop it was. I really wanted to go south and harvest it. But let's be real, showing my face near them was insanely risky. If they connected me to the warrior who killed their chief and dragged off their shaman, they would come in force while I was still debating. Then Chomo returned after being away for 2 days. His crushed expression told me everything before he even spoke. The tiger, he choked, killed her. Honestly, I had no words. He had been visiting a female bear, who lived completely alone up there. Bears are solitary. She had refused to join us despite his begging. I suggested it too, but she wanted her own territory. Now she was dead, looking at this giant, who followed me through absolute hell, sitting right there with tears in his eyes. I made my decision. Was the tiger hurt? I asked seriously. Yes, he grunted. I smelled its blood, his eyes going hard. You see, bears and tigers are natural rivals in any world. He was not afraid, just pure furious. Before autumn arrived, that beast would pay for Chumo's woman. For our tribe's safety, I assembled 10 fully armed men, Deer, Ming, and Cat. Knight and 7 others stayed behind to guard our settlement, while I took Chomo, Mian, Jia, and the rest into the mountains, heading for Pine Tree Mountain, east of the forest, far taller than anything in our range. Its only resident had been a lone, bear-eating woman, Chumo's lost mate. The massive tiger had claimed her territory just days ago. Chumo led our group straight up the slope. He carried an enormous stone axe. He ground it down himself. During boring afternoons back at camp, even without transforming, that giant weapon could easily fell most beasts. Normally, me and Mian scouted all alone, but this time, I kept her close, absolutely no solo runs on a tiger hunt. She pouted the entire climb. Jay and the rest were clearly looking nervous. This was everyone's first actual tiger hunt. That fear of tigers is just baked into their bloodlines. So they walked with incredibly quiet steps. Halfway up, we finally reached a cave. The bear woman's home. Chumo's expression cracked the second he saw the clay pots inside. He brought those from our settlement as gifts for her. I put a hand on his back. We rest here tonight. Tomorrow, we find it. Mian sat down and pulled off her little deerskin boots. Chenyu had sewn them from tanned hide, and they actually looked like proper footwear. A faint smell of sweat drifted out. She caught me staring at her bare white feet and glared. It is still summer, I laughed. Nobody forced you to wear those leather boots. I noticed something about our little leopard girl. Over these weeks, she was pretty vain. She loved being clean. She started soaking her feet in hot water every single night, until they went from grimy black to pale white. She was the first person in the entire tribe to actually want shoes. Now she was eyeing the clay pots in the cave. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She wanted hot water for her feet. Let me ask Chumo. I will go find water.